Alrighty, let me set the context for the video. In this video, we're making a website that lets you create other websites. If you've heard of 𝗟𝗲𝗵𝗹𝗀 or Bolt, we're trying to replicate exactly that. Bolt is open source. I've gone through their code base. I've understood how they're building the product from the ground up. We'll try to understand their architecture. We'll try to understand some extra architectures. We'll try to build using one of these architectures. The things that you're going to learn are: number one, how do you interact with GPT APIs? Number two, how do you build any GPT wrapper? This is just one of many use cases that you can build on GPT. Number three, we'll understand what are web containers, what are the various approaches you can build a website like this. And lastly, a bunch of simple front-end and back-end challenges. By the end of it, you'll have a website where your users can come, put in a prompt and generate a website for themselves. They can also keep re-prompting the website to improve the UI so that by the end of it, they have a comprehensive website that they can create an MVP out of. With that, let's get right into the video.
All right, hi everyone, and welcome to a new video. Today we're making a website that lets you build other websites. This is a video I've been thinking of doing for a while, and recently there's a new product in town called Bolt.new. I'm unsure how many of you have seen this, but this is a website that lets you make other websites. For example, if I ask it, can you build me a simple to-do application? It will start to write all the code for it in React, Next.js, whatever framework you specify, directly in your browser. And this isn't something new. 𝗟𝗲𝗵𝗹𝗀 has been doing it for a while. There are a bunch of other companies, but there's something special that these guys are doing. I also figured this out yesterday when I was trying to go through their architecture, because a bunch of their code is open source. So what they're doing is actually much more ingenious compared to what anyone else is doing. And that gives them some moat, some power over other businesses. This is like very easy to build. But what's hard to build is the other technology that these guys have been building for years. Like Bolt.new is a new product, but StackBlitz, the company that released Bolt.new, has been building something else for years. So we'll understand what that is. What is that moat that's very hard for anyone else to replicate? And why can't you just clone their GitHub repo and build a business out of it? Then we'll try to build our own version of it. We'll see if we use their moat or if we build our own architecture. I'll talk through both of them. My first principles architecture for building this was something else. Then I read through what they're doing, which is actually pretty ingenious, and uses something called web containers. Web containers is something that these guys have built. So we'll understand what are web containers and why are they better than any other approach that you might take to build something like this. Then we'll try to build the same thing. The motivation for this was fairly simple. I have a class tomorrow on GPT APIs, and whenever I'm taking a class, the goal is to build a project. This seems like the best GPT wrapper that you can build, although there are a lot of things other than being a GPT wrapper that are happening over here. So we'll try to understand that. With that, let's get right into it. As you saw a while back, I asked it to build a simple to-do application. And if you look at it, it's written all the code for me. This is a React project. It has an app.tsx where there's to-dos, which is a state variable, does something over here, stores it in local storage. There's an add to-do function. There's a toggle to-do function. There's a delete to-do function. These are the final components that render. If you look at a preview for it, currently it says no to-dos added yet. Add one above. Let me add go to gym. And it'll, as you would expect, add it to a list. I can check it off later as well. I can delete it as well. So fairly clean UI. It is a website, so I can eventually deploy it as well. There's a button to deploy it over here. I can also preview it in full screen, and it's like any other website you would visit. It also has the underlying code for it, so you can always eject out of Bolt, bring it to your own local code base and start to edit it, build from there. So it's a great product to build MVPs. And for the first time, MVPs are so clean. All of their products are fairly, if you're trying to build something from here. Recently, I was trying to do an experiment with another teacher. It built everything you would want it to build, plus gave you the code for it. So how do you build a platform like this? Let's understand the architecture first. How would you build something like this? Then we'll try to code it. Okay? We'll understand two architectures. The complex architecture, which is the one that I thought of initially, which is the one you will have to take if you want to build a business out of this. And then the simpler architecture, which is how these guys are doing it, which you can try and probably is going to be the architecture that we use today as well. But it'll be really hard for you to build a business out of this because you'll heavily rely on web containers. And web containers are a technology owned by StackBlitz, from what I know. You can't use it for commercial purposes without paying them. So Doesn't matter how many people build this. In the end, StackBlitz would be the one that's winning, because if everyone builds it on top of web containers, the value would accrue to web containers, which is owned by StackBlitz in the first place. So I think this website is more of a distribution metric for them. It provides them distribution for their core product, which is web containers. And the website, as I said, is open source only. So even they don't care about le jao bhai lena hai to, because there's not much to build in the website. It's just a GPT wrapper. It's still pretty interesting how they've built it, but the underlying technology, web containers, is the most interesting bit here. With that, let me take you through the architecture of how a GPT wrapper like this is built. Maybe even before that, what exactly is a GPT wrapper? The name itself is giving it away. It is a wrapper, which means ChatGPT is an independent product doing really well. So anyone can go to chatgpt.com or Claude.ai. You have an input box. You can provide it a prompt over here. Whatever prompt you give, it will give you some response in lieu of it. So a simple LLM, a large language model, would process your prompt and give you the response for it. A GPT wrapper is when you're heavily relying on ChatGPT. So you have your own website. For example, a good example might be a slides AI or a photo AI, even though this wouldn't use an LLM, this would use an image model. So maybe a better example might be even video AI or something like this, something that we're trying to build today, Bolt. A website that lets you build slides via AI. You give it some prompt, okay, please create the slides for my class on binary search. It'll somehow talk to GPT. It'll somehow talk to some LLM model, and the model would return it something. Based on this response, your slides would be built. So that is what a GPT wrapper is. The term wrapper means कि आपने इसके ऊपर बनाया है. You are not building your own LLM. You're not building your own model. You're heavily relying on a pre-existing model that's really good, be it ChatGPT, be it OpenAI's model, be it Claude's model, so on and so forth. So GPT wrappers are a popular product. Which GPT wrapper are we building today? We're building something similar to Bolt.neo or v0.dev, both of which are websites that let you create other websites. So you come to this website, you give it a prompt, please create a to-do application for me. And this prompt goes to their simple centralized backend. This is the backend for Bolt or v0.dev. Yahan se your prompt gets modified a bit. Your prompt gets enriched a bit. कुछ तो होता है आपके prompt पे. We'll see what that is. Their code is open source. But your prompt and a bunch of extra things get eventually pushed to a good model, something like the Claude's model or ChatGPT. And it responds back with some very big response. Now, what is this response? What should be the structure of this response? We'll see. And then using this response, you have to build a website. तो कोई developer नहीं है दूसरी side पे जो बैठा है. There is no developer sitting on the other side that's writing the code for this. All of this is being written by some LLM. Your goal or the difficult bit is parsing the response from the LLM and putting it to an editor that looks like this. That's the hard bit. How do you process the response from a model? How should you talk to the model and tell it कि भाई ऐसा response दियो, give me response that looks like this, so that I can create a web page and I'm able to comprehend कि LLM मुझे कहना क्या चाह रहा है. I'm able to comprehend what the LLM is telling me and create files and folders out of this. So what we'll build is a simple backend where a prompt would come as the input, something like create a to-do application. We would somehow enrich the prompt and talk to the LLM. The LLM would return us a response. Now, ideally, what should this response be? Can you guess already? We have told the LLM कि भाई build a to-do application. So what should the LLM return us? It should return us a bunch of steps, one after the other, that are needed to build a to-do application. What could these steps be? Step number 1 might be to initialize a React application. How do you do that? Let's say you're using Vite. So you run the command npm Vite create @latest, something like this. That creates a empty React project for you. What should the next step be that the LLM returns you? कि यार update the dependencies, add let's say Tailwind. So do a npm install Tailwind that would install Tailwind into your React project. The third step might be create a to-do component with this code inside. So all the code will be returned by the GPT for sure, but it will return you this code, all these commands, one step after the other. And your backend should be able to parse this response. It should be able to understand this is step 1. I need to do this. It needs to do step 1. Then it needs to understand this is step 2. It needs to do step 2, so on and so forth. So the LLM is going to return you a bunch of response, hopefully in a very structured point by point manner. And you have to execute all of these commands one after the other. Where do you execute these commands? That is the most difficult bit here. This part remains the same, irrespective of if you're building a slides AI or if you're building a photo AI, even though this is not the best example, or if you're building a, I don't know, script writer AI that writes the script for you, or something like bolt.new, this step remains the same. Your backend needs to talk to an LLM. The LLM needs to respond back with a very big response, and you need to parse out the response. In case of script writer AI, this is very simple. The response will probably be the script itself. The person wants to write the script for their video. You'll get it from the LLM, you'll respond it back to the user. That's easy. It gets difficult when you're building complex things like these. You're asking the LLM to write multiple files, not just one file. So the LLM would return you a response, which has all of these steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Question is, where do you run these commands? Where does npm create vite at the rate of latest run? Where does npm install tailwind run? Where does app.tsx get created? Where does todo.tsx get created? So on and so forth. This is where we'll divide our architecture into 2 parts. You can either do what Stack Blitz does, which is you can use something called web containers. We'll talk about what these are. Or you can write your own backend for it, basically run all of this on your own infrastructure, your own backend, all of these commands, so that the user's code is present on your server. These are the 2 approaches you can take. Before I get into these 2 approaches, ye 2 approaches kyun hain, 3 kyun nahi, I'll talk through some very fundamental concepts about the browser, the backend, and how does code actually execute in the real world. So whenever you are creating a React application, or if you're creating a Node.js application or a Golang application, you write a bunch of code. You write a main.go file, or you write a index.js file, or you write a app.jsx file. This code, 99.9% of the times, runs on a server. This code compiles on a server in case of React. In case of Node.js, it runs on the server. In case of Golang, it compiles and runs on the server. Your browser can't interpret Golang code. Your browser can't interpret Node.js code. There are ways to do it, but 99.9% of the times, this will be running on your server somewhere, and your browser will not be executing any of these technologies, including React. React compilation also happens on the server. The bundle eventually comes to the JavaScript, to the browser, but let's not go there. Very simply, if you ever want to create an application, even like this, which has an app.tsx and some React code, you would expect कि ये code किसी server पे पड़ा है. This code is present on a server, and this final preview that you see is coming from a server somewhere else. This is already deployed. This is what happens on Replit. If I go to REPL.it, which is another website that lets you do something similar. Let me open a React REPL if I have one already. JavaScript. I don't have, oh, there you go. No, TypeScript. There you go. This is a very old React REPL that I have. You might think this looks very similar. This is a sidebar. This looks like a React project. This is a sidebar. This looks like a React project. But they're significantly different. This is why our approaches are different. There is the Replit approach. Even Replit has an AI. You can use Replit to create a website automatically using AI. You can do that here also. But this is significantly different from this. This is where my mind blew yesterday, because my original approach of building this would have been to build something like Replit first. Build something like Replit, where people can come write their code and it compiles somewhere and you can see the output here. That is what I expected Bolt does as well. But yesterday, as I was reading through the code base, I realized the story is much bigger. We'll understand what that story is. So there is the Replit approach of building this. Okay, the AI model is returning all the files and the folders that you store on a Replit server. This code, even though you see it locally, this code also exists on a server somewhere. If I go to this URL, I can eject out of this URL and I'm hitting some server, some thing that's not my own machine. It is hosted somewhere else. All of my files are hosted somewhere else. There is a server somewhere. Replit is paying for it. And that is why Replit only lets you create 3 REPLs, only lets you run 1 REPL at a time because it is expensive for them if people are using their computers. Abhi ke liye, my code is running on a Replit computer. That is not happening here. That's the most ingenious bit here. Okay, this is actually running inside a web container. What is a web container we'll come to. But long story short, this code is not on a server somewhere. I can't go to a website right now. I can deploy it eventually and then it will go to a server. But abhi ke liye, I am accessing this code locally and this code is running locally. This React project is compiling locally. Everything is happening over here. All of these commands that are running in this terminal are also running inside my browser. They are not running on a server somewhere. This is extremely counterintuitive because browsers are not supposed to run React code or Node.js code or create HTTP servers. But web containers let you do it. Web containers have been built for exactly this. The name itself is giving it away. Web container. It is a container that runs directly inside a website. So we'll understand both of these approaches. Let's go through the Replit approach first, let's say. If I were to build this before yesterday, I would have built it using a different approach. The approach being something like Replit. Just how Replit lets you create a websites right now. Daisy. Just like Replit lets you create websites like now, I would have done the same. So I thought step 1 will be creating something like Replit. Step 2 would be creating a GPT wrapper on top. But in actuality, what these guys are doing, step 1 is building something like web containers. Then step 2 is building a GPT wrapper on top. So let's go through the Replit approach first. The Replit approach says, कि यार पहले सब कुछ भूल जाओ, forget AI, forget ChatGPT. Just build a code execution environment. What is a code execution environment? Something like this. Here people will come to your website. People will write code over here. People will click on run and this code needs to run somewhere else on a server. And you can visit that server and see what response you get back from here. Your code, everything that you see over here is not running on your browser. It's running somewhere else. Same is true for lead code. If you ever go to lead code, and try to submit for a problem. Let me open a random problem here and try to click on submit. This code that I have written is not executing inside my browser. It is executing on a server somewhere and I'm getting the response from there. Same is true for Replit. So step 1, if you're building this as Replit, is कि पहले Replit बनाओ. How do you build Replit? I have a video on it. You can go through it. It's one of many approaches to create something like Replit. This video. So feel free to go through it and understand how Replit is built and then try to build a GPT wrapper on top. If you're able to build this, building a GPT wrapper is actually much easy. Approach number 2 is the approach where we use web containers, before which we need to understand what are web containers. So let's understand, okay, what exactly does Stack Blitz do? What is their actual core offering, which is web containers? That makes this a very easy process to build something like Bolt. And why is it better? Why is this approach 100 times better than the other approach you would take? In approach number 1 in Replit, if a user comes, let's say this is a browser where a user came and they want to build a website of theirs, whatever code we generate for them, be it HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Node.js, will exist on a server of ours. In the browser, they will see the code, but that code is also present on the server over here. This code is present in 2 different places. And when you click on the run button, you are running your code here on a server. That becomes a problem because if you have 100 browsers running, you need 100 servers, 100 containers, something you need. You need a lot of compute of your own. You need to bring up a bunch of servers that are running the user's code and letting them see the response. That is significantly different from what happens in StackBlitz. Here, if this is a browser and you give a prompt, GPT returns you some response, those files exist over here only. Inside your browser, there is something called as a web container that is created, inside which your code is executing, be it Node.js code, be it Express code, be it React code. So that is why this approach is significantly better. These guys don't need to spend millions of dollars on compute. इनके users का code इनके browser में ही चल रहा है. The user's code is running directly inside the browser over here in Bolt. So you just have to figure out how can this code be generated. As long as you can talk to GPT well, GPT returns your response and you're able to put it into various files here in the browser. Executing it is much easier in case of StackBlitz compared to Replit. So from here, we should probably, I hope you understand the architecture. Let me recap the architecture before we proceed. The architecture of what we're building today is going to look like this. We're going to use the web container approach. You can't commercialize the web container approach. You should know this. So if you want to build this as a product, you will have to pay StackBlitz. They'll probably charge you whatever, some XYZ money. So you can't clone, you can clone it, but you can't commercialize this product if you're using StackBlitz or if you're using web containers. Then you should go with the Replit approach or build something like web containers on your own. It's probably fairly hard. So let's understand what we're building one more time, the architecture. We'll build a Next.js application. As I said, their code is open source, so we can actually read through their code base and understand it, or build it from scratch. Either is fine. We can build a Next.js application, or their application is Next.js. So let's keep things simple and create an Express application and a React frontend. Okay? To keep things very simple, we will create a React frontend. We'll create an Express application. When the user is on your website, when they visit your website, they get back the frontend bundle from your React server. They give a prompt. The prompt goes to the Express application. From the Express application, the prompt gets forwarded to an LLM. Now, the most hard bit here is going to be engineering the prompt. User has just said, create a to-do application. You need to tell the LLM, create a to-do application, and at the same time, please return me the response in a specific format. You can't expect the LLM to just give you random text and you be able to parse out. आप उसको parse नहीं कर पाओगे. You will not be able to understand कि अच्छा this exists in app.tsx. ये सारा code, all of these files will come from the LLM. So you should be able to parse it correctly. So the biggest problem is going to be enriching this prompt. User is giving you a small prompt. How can you enrich the prompt and make it bigger? And in the prompt, write here, return me the data in this response. Forward it to the LLM. LLM responds back. And then the LLM's response, how can you pass it to the user's web container? Yahan pe you will start a web container where you will start to put files inside the web container based on what the LLM is telling you. The LLM will tell you कि app.tsx बनाओ उसमें ये डालो, todo.tsx बनाओ उसमें ये डालो, put this content in todo.tsx, put this content in app.tsx. And you need to do the same thing. You need to do that inside the browser directly. You don't have to worry about doing that on the server. Here is where the LLM's response would eventually get put. And then you just run the web container for the user. Then there are follow-up questions. How can you make sure if the user wants to change something? For example, I might ask it, make it in dark mode, please. Then what do you tell the LLM? How do you give the LLM some context? This was the old application you built. Please build a new application that is in dark mode, and it just updates your existing application. That is a different question. We'll get to that question later. Abhi ke liye, let's get into how can you build a V1 of this. V1 में ऐसा करते हैं, web containers की भी चिंता नहीं करते हैं. I think V1 needs to be you talk to the user, sends you the prompt. The user sends you the prompt. The prompt reaches your Express application. You forward it to the LLM. LLM gives you the full React application in a certain structure. You forward it back to the front end. Front end में दिख जाए application. That is step 1. And step 2, we can see how can you make it better. It's already breaking on me. Let's see what happened here. Yeah, already the LLM started to hallucinate. This is Murphy's law. If I'm recording it, it's not working. Usually Bolt works fairly well. I've built a few applications inside this. It's very good for MVPs. with that, let's get into the coding bit, guys. Let's start to understand how can you talk to GPT APIs. I don't know how many of you have done this in the past, but you need an open API key or a Claude key. You need to understand how can you talk to GPT wrappers. You need to look at their SDKs, which are usually in Python, sometimes in Node.js or whatever, JavaScript, TypeScript. So let's get into that next. Let's understand what are the steps you have to follow to be able to talk to an LLM programmatically. $1 million USDC रिटर्न कर देगा, उनके बैंक में $1 million US आ जाएगा.
But how?
That's why
Suppose USDC, one USDC
equal to
is equals to one USD.
$1, correct.
$1.
Correct.
So अब वो कैसे स्टेबल कैसे होगा?
Exactly. So let's say उसका प्राइस बढ़ने लग गया. Let's say it became $2.
$2.
US जो सर्कल जो एंटिटी है वो कहता है I will always honor this contract. अगर मेरे से लोगे तो मैं आपको $1 के बदले 1 USDC दूंगा, 1 USDC के बदले $1 दूंगा. तो अगर प्राइस 2 हो गया तो what will you do? You will give US the circle entity $1 million, get $1 million USDC, sell it for $2 million US.
AMM कर रहा हो तो मतलब वो
AMM नहीं है exactly. This is not an AMM, but yes, there will be arbiters.
arbiters, sorry.
अगर थोड़ा सा ऊपर या नीचे प्राइस आएगा तो people will come and directly arbiter it.
अच्छा.
क्योंकि there is someone who is selling it for $1. There is someone that will always honor that contract. तो किसी भी exchange में प्राइस थोड़ा सा ऊपर या नीचे गया, some people will arbiter. If you ever get USDC for 0.99, you should buy it. क्योंकि आज नहीं तो कल you can always sell it to circle for $1.
बेसिक बॉट लोग तो वही करते होंगे, मतलब जैसे
बेसिक
बॉट जो बॉट डेवलप कर रहे हैं,
हाँ वो लोग ये करते हैं. अगर थोड़ा सा भी नीचे है, थोड़ा सा भी ऊपर है
तो बेच दे रहे हैं.
हाँ,
ऊपर आया तो बेच
दे रहे, नीचे आया तो खरीद रहे. हाँ, तो दैट इज वाई थोड़ा सा भी नीचे आता है बहुत लोग उसको खरीदने लग जाते हैं, उसका प्राइस बढ़ जाता है. थोड़ा सा भी ऊपर जाता है बहुत लोग उसको बेचने लग जाते हैं, प्राइस गिर जाता है.
उनका USDC का सिलिकॉन वैली बैंक में अटक गया था ना.
हाँ, तभी तो प्राइस गिरा.
वो 20 मतलब
80 पे आ गया.
80 पे आया था.
आई नो.
वो कैसे
हुआ था ना उनका. The reason Circle can always honor this contract is because they have your money in a bank. But if that bank gets seized, then they won't be able to honor that contract.
They are not giving withdrawal. That's why
it wasn't like they weren't giving withdrawal. There was panic that they might not be able to give withdrawal. So everyone started selling it.
Okay.
And arbiters were like, खरीदेंगे नहीं, खरीदे यार. It is at $0.8, but they might not be able to honor the contract. Then SVB got funded, so the back. So around 30% of their assets were in SVB. So the fair price at that point everyone thought was 70 cents. क्योंकि इनके पास 70 cents ही बचा, बाकी सारा इनका गया. But eventually SVB was funded. All right. So in this section, we're going to focus on how can you connect a Node.js backend to an LLM API. You can use ChatGPT or you can use Claude. I'm going with Claude. We're going to use a library that lets us connect to these guys, most probably. You can also directly hit their HTTP endpoints with your API key and get a response. Either is fine. But for us, we're going to first get an API key from an Anthropic. This means you have to put in a card. So, fair disclaimer over here. If you want to connect your Node.js backend to Claude or ChatGPT, you have to put in $5 or something like that. I think you can get credits if you're a student. So step one is going to be, I'm going to get an API key. So let me create a new API key over here. Call it Bolt, because that's what we're trying to build. And it gives me this API key that I'm going to keep safe for now. By the time this specific class ends, I'll delete the API key as well. Where should I keep it safe? Let me also initialize an empty Node.js project. So CD projects, I've already cloned bolt.new, their version. I've gone through it a little bit also. We're going to create our own version. So let me call it bolt.newer. That is going to be our project. Let me open this in Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to initialize two things here, a front end and a back end. As I said, we're going to use Node.js for the back end and React for the front end. So mkdir backend and npm create wait@latest for front end. Let me select React as the framework, TypeScript as the language. The front end is going to be a fresh React project. Let me keep it there for now. The backend is going to be, let me init a package.json. Let me initialize a tsconfig.json. Before that, let me do an npm install TypeScript. Then let me initialize an empty tsconfig.json. Let me set root dir to be ./src, out dir to be ./dist. And let me create a new source folder in here, inside which I'm going to add index.ts. And right next to it, let me add a .env file where I'm going to paste Anthropic. I will mess up their spelling. So let me just call it Claude API underscore key equal to the API key that I got from the dashboard, which I have lost now. So let me delete the old API key and regenerate it. Copy it and keep it handy over here. For your TypeScript project to be able to read this .env file, where you keep all of your secrets, you need to add .env as a dependency. And at the top of your index.ts file, just do a require .env.config. These are steps that you need to follow if you want to store your secrets separately in a .env file and not expose it to the world. Let me fix the spelling. And usually it's good practice to add a .env.example so that everyone can see what your .env file looks like. And make sure the .env is in .gitignore. Hopefully you guys already understand this. If not, let me give a TLDR. All of your secrets, your database credentials, you should put here. And you should make sure you don't commit this to GitHub. If you commit this to GitHub, everyone can see your Claude key and exploit it. And hence you should create another file called .env.example, which you push to GitHub. So everyone can see that Claude API key is one of the keys I need to put here, but everyone puts their own API keys. You don't publish your over the internet because this is bad. If you publish this, everyone can see your API keys. Other than that, .gitignore to make sure I never commit this even by mistake over to GitHub. And then I have index.ts. This line of code will make sure this .env file is parsed and I can access the Claude API key in process.env.claude underscore API underscore key. So let me log it and show you it does indeed work. Let me also add in the backend folder package.json. Oopsie daisy. Let me create a new dev script, which will build my TypeScript code, tsc-p, and run it node dist/index.js. Now if I run npm run dev, it will run this dev script over here, which will compile my TypeScript code and call node dist/index.js, which prints undefined right now, which means we have a problem. Most probably the problem being I've written this over here and yahan pe I've written, no, that looks fine. Require .env.config, .env exists over here. What could be the reason? What did I do wrong? I had the .env file in the source folder, but it needs to be in the root folder, which is right here. So .env and .env.example both exist in the root folder now. I've created a source. Index.ts, .gitignore should also exist in the root folder. So to recap, I created a source/index.ts file that looks like this. I logged the Claude API key over here. I require .env at the top so that the .env file that is present in the root folder, whatever is the value over here, gets parsed and put over here. Now we need to use this API key to connect it to a backend, or send an API request to the backend for basic prompts. Let's see how to do that. I have no idea. I've never used the Claude API. So let's search for Claude API JS. They have developer docs. If I look at the docs, there is an API reference. If I go here, you can use Workbench or the APIs. So they have something which probably get code. There we go. In TypeScript. Perfect. So this is the code that we need to write to be able to send a request to Claude and get back a response. So let's bring it over to Visual Studio Code. Let's replace process.env.myAPI_key with const Claude underscore API underscore key equal to this. And it anyways defaults to this. So what we can do is just do this, and in our .env replace Claude API key with an Anthropic API key. Even in .env.example, let's replace it with this. Why? Because इन्होंने कहा है कि by default अगर आप इसको कोई API key नहीं देते हो, if you don't give it any API key, it will default to this from the environment variables. So we just renamed our environment variable to be this. Now I don't need to pass anything. Let me copy over the import to the top. I don't need this specific line of code. Now comes the question of, I've initialized an instance of an Anthropic. I also need to install this dependency. So npm install @anthropic-ai/sdk. And while that is happening, I need to make sure this await request goes inside an async function. So let me create an async function main, inside which I'm going to send this request, and I'm going to call the main function over here. So I've written an async function called main. I've called the main function over here, which calls an anthropic.messages.create with this specific model. Max number of tokens is this, temperature is this, and messages is this. Now comes the most sort of one jargon that you need to know of, which is, okay, when you are sending messages from Claude.ai, then you're sending what's called a user message. Okay, what is 2 plus 2? This is a user message. And then there's something else called a system message. If you go over to the docs, you will see okay, the type of this message is content as well as role. It is user or assistant. For now, we will stick to role. Eventually, we will see what assistant is. But the name is sort of giving. Okay, it is telling the LLM, okay, here is some extra data as the assistant. User ने ये नहीं मांगा है, but let me give you something as the some message as a user. So let's try to forward a message from here by giving it role of user and content being a simple string that says what is 2 plus 2, and hopefully it responds back with something. Const message equal to await. Create a message in an Anthropic. Use this model. This is the maximum amount of token that you need to respond with. Temperature is an important thing. Temperature means the amount of randomness injected into the response. Defaults to 1, ranges from 0 to 1. Use temperature closer to 0 for analytical/multiple choice, and closer to 1 for creative and generative tasks. So basically, if you're trying to generate an image, then you should use it closer to 1 because you want various variations. If I ask the same question 5 times, I want different responses. But if I want the answer to something like what is 2 plus 2, the answer is 4. I don't need too much variation there. The answer currently is 4. The answer could have been 4. I don't want the assistant to respond with various types of messages. I just want one type of message. So I would assume temperature means that. We can quickly Google temperature in API in LLM models. Really affects the randomness of the generated response. Yeah, that's what I would assume it is. Okay, if you ask the same question twice with temperature set to 0, it would return you the same response, is my guess. I could be wrong, we'll check. And if you set it closer to 1, then you'll get a bunch of random responses every time you ask the same question. In recent years, LLMs have stood out as revolutionary tools that are capable of what is temperature. LLMs are usually trained on large amount of text. Wait, I just want the answer to it. At its core, LLM temperature controls the balance between playing more safely and exploring new possibilities, exploration versus exploitation in the model's output. Lower temperature favor exploiting the patterns LLM has already learned and mastered, making the outputs more predictable and reliable. It is ideal when accurate and factual information is needed. Conversely, the higher temperature encourages exploration, meaning that the LLM gets adventurous. So this is not that. I think that's a seed. What I was thinking this is. This isn't a seed. Seed leads to the randomness in the output. This is something else. Temperature, it seems, is okay, how much do you want the model to explore? If and in our case, probably the answer is closer to 1. I could be wrong, but I think you want variations and in the responses of creating a website, and you want it to give different outputs for different people. Actually, I don't know. Bolt, I think, gives you very similar responses. That might be 0. We'll see. It ventures beyond the familiar patterns and increases the chances of surprising and creative, potentially yielding more diverse. Yeah, probably need it closer to 0, I would say, for our application, but we'll see. Not be fully deterministic. Oh, there you go. It says even with temperature set to 0, it will not give you the same response both the times. It will still not be deterministic. All right, let's keep it 0. I think it makes sense for it to be 0 for our application, but we'll see. Then we log the message. Now, one thing you have to do over here is you have to make sure you have some credits, else it will not work. So make sure you have like $5, $10 in there. Else, of course, this will fail. You need to pay them money to be able to use their API. Let's see what this logs. Let me run npm run dev again. And this time it responds with something like this. The answer is 2 plus 2 equal to 4, which is what you would expect. Let me run it again. Says the same thing. Let me, just for kicks, change the temperature to 1. Still returns the same thing. And if I search the same message through their GUI, it simply returns 4. Cool. Okay. We've been able to talk to an LLM model. It is able to return the response. What is the problem here? Let me ask it to write the code for a to-do application. Let me run it again. And this time, hopefully it gives you a very big response, which has the code for a simple to-do application. We're slowly getting there, but there's a lot of things we need to fix. That is taking a long time, which brings us to our very first thing that we need to change, which is, okay, it stopped because of max tokens. I told it I only need a maximum of 1,000 tokens. So it stopped generating it beyond a point, but it looks like some simple HTML, CSS code. HTML code that generates hopefully a to-do application. So it seems to work. From a backend, we're able to generate a website. Now comes the second question, the second important thing we have to do, which is stream data. The problem is, right now, if there's a very big blob of data that you need, you will not get it immediately. As you saw, it took almost 10 seconds. So we need to start streaming data. जो data आ रहा है, वो यहाँ पे आता रहा है. If I ask the same thing, the same question in the Claude GUI, notice it returns me the data in a streamed fashion. वो धीरे धीरे करके आता रहता है. This is better for user experience generally, for you to be able to see these responses streamed rather than seeing them all at once. So let's try to change this. Let's try to figure out how can you stream data from the backend. All right, let's figure out how do you stream messages from an Anthropic over to your Node.js backend and preferably to the front end eventually. Let's again, I don't know if the workbench is the best place for it. Authentication IP address, accessing the API, authentication, content types, rate limits, client SDK, messages, patch messages, create a message, count a message, token, streaming message. There you go. That's what we need. So when creating a message, you can set stream to true to incrementally stream the response from the server using server-side events. That makes sense. The Python and TypeScript SDKs offer multiple ways of streaming. The Python SDK allows both synchronous and asynchronous streams. Let's look at the TypeScript SDK. Messages.stream, role model, max tokens, .onText. That looks pretty straightforward. So let's try to replace our message with, this streamed message, and surprisingly they use server-side events. Anthropic.messages, so I would call it. And anthropic.message.stream. Seems like you don't even need to await this, and you can just log the text over here. That's great. Let's send it a request similar to the old one. Create a simple to-do app and try to run it. And as you can see, the response is slowly getting streamed back to the backend, which is great. That's exactly what we needed. Is that enough? That seems like that's all we need on the Node.js API side. Of course, things will change. Like we have to do a bunch of other things, but this is a great start. We've been able to talk to the API. We're able to send it a message. For example, create a simple to-do application. What is the next step? It's engineering the prompt. The problem is this is returning you a very simple response. It's very hard for you to tell what it should exist in a file, what should not exist in a file, which file is what, so on and so forth. So this is where I would like to introduce you to the code base of bolt.new, the website that we were looking at before. I've gone through their code base, and if you look through it, their prompt is fairly complex. So if you look at their prompt, this is their main prompt. Let's read through it. You are Bolt, an expert AI assistant and exceptional senior software developer with vast knowledge across multiple programming languages, frameworks, and best practices. You are operating in an environment called web containers. So this is where, these guys use web containers, so it makes sense to put some sort of this in the prompt. If you're using something else, I think even this is fine, doesn't matter. It's just giving it context कि अंत में web container में चलेगा. What is a web container? थोड़ा I've talked about. थोड़ा we'll see when we start to create our own web container. But it's telling that to Claude, which may or may not be needed actually. As an in-browser Node.js runtime, this is what a web container is, by the way. It lets you run Node.js in the browser. That emulates a Linux system to some degree. However, it does run in the browser and doesn't run a fully fledged Linux system, doesn't rely on cloud VMs to execute code. All code is executed directly in the browser. This is pretty much the definition of a web container. It does come with a shell that emulates ZSH. The container cannot run native binaries since those cannot be executed by the browser. This means only can execute code that is native to the browser, including JavaScript, WebAssembly, etc. The shell comes with Python and Python 3 binaries, but they're limited to Python standard libraries. This means there is no pip available. It doesn't really matter for us. We're not building a C++ or a Python application. We're building a Node.js application. Web container has the ability to run a web server, but it requires you to use an NPM package, for example, Express, or use a Node.js API to implement a web server. Prefer using Vite instead of implementing a custom web server. Git is not available. Prefer writing Node.js scripts instead of shell scripts. Yada yada yada. It's giving you a bunch of system constraint information कि कहाँ पे ये code run होने वाला है. Code formatting info, use two spaces throughout for indentation. Message formatting info, you can make the output pretty by using only the following available HTML5 elements, and it has a list of HTML5 elements that it has restricted it to कि इनमें से ही कोई use करना, don't use any other HTML5 element. For user made modifications, bolt file modifications section will appear at the start of your user message. It will contain either a diff or a file elements for each modified file. That makes sense. You're writing a bunch of code. LLM is writing a bunch of code. In the future, if you make some changes and talk to the LLM again, LLM would not know कि आपने file change कर दी है. So they've written a diff spec. This is the spec of differences. When you're on bolt.new, when you talk to, let me just show it to you practically. When you're talking here, create a to-do app. In fact, let me just make it even easier for you. Let's just inspect the requests that go out. Let me go to bolt.new, open the network tab, and show you what requests we're forwarding to Bolt, which it proxies over to, Claude. Create a to-do app. So we're sending it a request called create a to-do application. What's happening is we're sending it this request. Okay, hey, this is the message that needs to go over to Claude. This is the very first big prompt. Okay, everything that you make it very pretty, yada, yada, yada. That's a Bolt prompt. Then the user prompt was Makes sense. Let me just copy it and show you. Last one is probably my prompt. Running commands. Yeah, we should read through this. It is giving it a lot of context initially कि ये रहा project जो आप बना रहे हो. It's giving it an initial project basically. So let me just copy and show it to you. Let's open this. Sorry, we were looking at the LLM response. The prompt. We will still look at it. But before that, let's look at कि हम बेचते क्या हैं उसे. What do we give? When I write create a to-do application, that is not what reaches Claude. First, a bunch of messages reach Claude. The first message being very simple. For all designs I want you to make, I want them to be beautiful, yada, yada, yada. Sundar hone chahiye. That is fine. The second message that we sent is this very long message which says, here is an artifact that contains all the files of the project visible to you. Consider all contents of all the files in the project. Project import, title, project files, bolt action type file. There is an eslint.config.js file that looks something like this. Keeps on going. Let's search for bolt action. There you go. There is a eslint.config.js. There is an index.html. There is a package.json that looks like this Vite React starter. Basically, it is just telling Claude कि भाई initial project तेरे पास ये रहा, ये context रखियो. You have an initial project that looks something like this. It has an eslint.config.json. It has a index.html. It has a package.json. It has a post css.config.json. It has a tailwind.config.json. Everything that you have in a fresh TypeScript Vite project, basically everything that I have over here in my fresh front-end project as well. It's not here. But जो हमने front-end project अभी बनाया था, या if you ever create your own React project, उसमें जो initial files होती हैं, that files, it is already telling the server कि भाई ये तो रही. It is already telling the LLM कि ये files already हैं. Please keep this in mind. Here is an artifact that contains all the files of the project visible to you. Consider the project contents of all the files in the project. ये सारे contents को consider करने के बाद अपनी to-do application बनाना. This is already available to you. This is the first message or the second message that we forward over to the LLM. We also need to do the same thing. Let's look at the third one. This one says कि इसके बाद ये running commands bolt file modifications. हाँ, इसके बाद it is saying कि I am also changing the .gitignore and removing it. I am also changing the eslint.config.json and removing it. Index.html removing it. Package lock removing it. And create a to-do application. This part I get. This was my prompt. उससे पहले it is running command/n bolt file modifications. What does that mean? File modifications. Modification tag name bolt file modifications. There you go. Will appear at the start of the user message. It will contain either a diff or a file, elements for each modified file. In our case, these are all files. So it is saying file path equal to .gitignore, type equal to removed. Why is it removing all the files? Is my final project not a TypeScript project? Or sorry, it does have app.tsx. Path equal to main.tsx, type removed file. This is weird. What is happening is these are the prompts that it sends, right? सबसे पहले it says कि भाई सुंदर website बनाना. That's the first message in our prompt. Then it says content. Then it says कि भाई ये सब कर दियो. Make sure these initial files are present there, and then it removes all of those files. Why does that happen? Is what I don't know. Why would it tell the LLM? Well, there's a type equal to removed. I would assume that means whatever type equal to removed means that this file has been removed. Uh, diff spec diff file path equal to this thing contains the full new contents of the file. System chooses file if the diff exceeds the new content size, otherwise it uses diff. That makes sense. Diff is simple this thing, but file path equal to this thing type equal to removed is what I don't understand. What does the type over here even mean? Nope, it does not tell. I mean, the easiest thing we can do is just go to Claude and try to give it this prompt and we'll understand what's happening. Let's go back here. Yeah, let's copy the whole thing and let's see what it returns. I click on review. That does not look like what we want. Yeah. I'm just confused with this third prompt that it sends. Everything else is fine. Why can't the third prompt simply be this? I don't know the answer. The answer could totally be कि it could be that, and इसकी ज़रूरत कोई है नहीं. I'm just confused. Everything else is fine. Like I'm just confused with why does it say file path equal to this, type equal to removed. Why does it remove all the files that it is creating over here? But are not being shown to you. Node package log.json .bomb/prompt. All right. Single comprehensive artifact for each project. The artifact contains all necessary steps and components, including shell commands running files to create and their contents, folder to create if necessary. When receiving a file from always cannot release this thing, wrap the content in an opening and closing bolt artifact tags. These tags contain specific bolt action elements, a title for ID, so here is what is happening. Let me take you through like what is happening right now, or what I understand right now. I guess I try to go to the website and say create a to-do app, and the message that gets sent out is actually, it has 3 messages inside. First message is the easiest, which is create a beautiful website, which makes sense. You don't want to tell the LLM के website सुंदर बनानी है. Second is कि these are the files that are already present. The already present files, you give it in a certain format कि ये files already present हैं. The third thing you give is you tell the LLM कि all of these files have been removed, is what I got. कि वो यहाँ पे बहुत सारी files बनाता है and it tells the LLM ये files बनी, it tells the LLM ये files delete हो गई. That part feels a little weird. कि why is it telling the LLM that these files have been removed? But we will see if that is indeed the case or not. And then at the end of the third prompt, it gives कि हाँ भाई, you have to create the new to-do application. So what I was trying to copy the whole thing and paste it in Claude. वो उसमें तो कुछ और ही हो रहा है. So maybe let's try to send this message and see what comes back. Let's try to send 3 messages. That's the first message. But along with the messages, I would assume ये prompt भी जाएगा. So let's see where this prompt is being used. Get system prompt is being used here and here. Oh, it's in the same file. There you go. So stream text, messages, and system, get system prompt. So can we do, let me add back our code base here. This is the bolt.new code base. Let me add my code base. And in here, can I send a system prompt over here? I indeed can. So let me just copy over their prompt and see what response we get back. So their prompt looks something like this. यहाँ पे prompt, I'm just going to copy their prompt.ts file. Honestly, I can't do that. They have a bunch of constant imports. So I'll need to get these constants as well. Modification tag. Okay, let me copy the whole thing. Go back to our code base. In backend, create a prompt.ts. It needs 3 things here or whatever, 3 imports here. So let's look at them. We just copy all 3 of these, paste them over in a constants.ts file only, I guess. Wait, this needs to be in the source folder. And there we go. That looks decent. And यहाँ पे I'll import it from /constants. Probably everything will come from there only. Cool. Let me also copy the rest of the things. Excuse me. Delhi has been crazy. There we go. And the last thing from here, strip indents, which comes from utils/strip indents. What does this function do? I have no idea, but it does use a private function as well. So I have to copy the whole thing. Let me just create a strip indents.ts file. Probably just indents your code would be my assumption. Strip, or probably unindents your code. It removes all the indents, so you don't give the LLM a lot of spaces, is my guess. कि वो सारे spaces हटा देता है. There we go. Cool. Yeah. Now I can replace index.ts with a system response. Excuse me. And let's see how that performs. Given the text I give it is create as excuse me. I'll have to take a break. I'm coughing very heavily. All right. Get system prompt returns the big prompt. I just need to replace the 3 messages with, let's say, the messages that Bolt gives out for an initial project. So let's replace the first message with, where did I write those? I don't remember, so let me re-add the prompts. Let's go here. Let's go back to Bolt. Oh, there we go. This is the first one. So let's just paste it here. And then there's another one. Role user content we would get from here. And then we need a third one. Role user content would be the final thing. We're just trying to see what response you get back for an initial prompt that you sent to Bolt, and the user prompt being just create a to-do app, everything else being the thing that it adds on top, along with a system prompt, which is pretty comprehensive. This one right here. that tells the LLM, okay, this is the structure of data that you're receiving, and you probably have to respond back with the same data. We'll see if that is the case. So let's try to run it. And let's see what data we get back. I'll create a beautiful functional to-do app. There we go. I'll create a beautiful and functional to-do application with smooth animations, categories, and a clean design. Does the same thing come back over here? I'll create a beautiful and functional to-do application with animations, categories, local storage persistence. All right. Modern to-do application. That's probably there you go. The title for the very first artifact. Bolt artifact ID equal to to-do app, title equal to modern to-do application. Bolt action equal to type equal to file, path equal to source / type / to-do.ts. Create initial files is the prompt over here. Install dependencies. I don't see both of them coming back from Bolt. So there's a high probability these are, directly run by, like both of these, create initial files and install dependencies are the prompts that are hard coded, like the initial prompts that are present, 5 minutes. So, and everything else comes from the LLM. Like step 1 and step 2 are actually hard coded by Bolt itself, and everything that you see after that, creating this file, this file, this file, this file, they're the things that are coming back from Bolt. Create use todos.ts. What's happening here? Create use todos.ts. If you look at the final thing, I think we get rate limited or whatever, token limited over here. But it seems like, and start application. Again, this one, I don't know if it comes from the LLM or not. So let's just increase the token length or just remove the max tokens and try it out one more time. You do need that. Let's see. Max tokens, 8,000. I'll create a beautiful website. Gives me the first file, the second file. Let it run. I would assume it gives you the commands as well. For example, things like npm install, npm run dev, but we'll see. We'll wait for the whole thing to come and then we'll figure it out. All right. Finally, it says I've created a beautiful application with the following features. I've created a beautiful application with the following features. These commands don't seem to be coming back, like npm install, npm run dev don't seem to be coming back from the LLM. I could be wrong, so let's copy the whole thing, paste it in this Scratch file that I have and search for npm install. I do see an npm run dev here, which is what comes here. So it seems like the first two are hard coded, or yeah, basically on the front end, Bolt figures out, okay, this is going to be a React application. So the first two messages it hard codes, and then everything else comes from the backend. And everything else is, sorry, not the backend, the LLM, and all of it gets executed here on the front end, including the last command, npm run dev, followed by the fact that I've created a, beautiful application that does XYZ. All right. That looks simple enough. So it seems like we have a backend. Of course, the prompts are a little ugly at the moment. This would require some polishing on the front end, figuring out, okay, is this going to be a React project? Is this going to be, for example, let's try out a Next.js project. Let's tell it to create a Next.js project instead of a React project. And let's look at the initial set of prompts that go out. So network tab, create a Next.js app, to-do app. Hopefully that's good enough. It understands what I'm telling it. Send. And then if you look at the initial set of messages that go out, chat, you will see the first message probably is create a beautiful, you have to beautiful. Yeah, that's just the constant prompt. The second message now, the artifacts, as you can see, it's much bigger. And if I paste it in Scratch, a Scratch file, create a new one. Oh, oopsie daisy. It seems like it initializes a TypeScript project in Next.js with shadcn installed. So it's great for us to have these prompts with us as well. These are the files that it would create for a Next.js project, and we already saw one for a React project, and we can get one for a whatever Svelte project. So these prompts are hard coded, but I would assume even before this chat app request goes out, this one right here, it sends a request somewhere that figures out, this needs to be a Next.js project or something else. So payload, preview, template, there we go. Perfect. So the first request that goes out, it goes out to /API/template to get an initial template. So let's search for template, bolt.new /API/template. If you look at the Bolt code base, app API/template. I don't know if this is part of their open source code base or not. Where does the chat endpoint exist? It exists on bolt.new /API/chat. So I would assume this template is also part of it. Let's look at bolt.new, and yeah, I don't see anything related to templates over here. So unfortunately, at least in their open source code base, I can't find this templates endpoint. But what it does is it is giving you a bunch of initial components to start with. In their case, this being a TypeScript project in Next.js with /CN. And before, when we were creating one for React, it was of course different. For Node.js, it will probably be different. Let's just try it out for Node.js. Let's see, can you create a pure backend application from here as well? Create a Node.js Express backend for my to-do app. And let's see what template it gets back. /template returns you template node files include an index.js, a package log.json, package.json, and .gitignore. So yeah, it seems like a few of their steps are hard coded in the backend, specifically initializing the project, and everything else that's the filling up the files and creating these files comes from the LLM, which makes sense. You don't want to overwhelm the LLM. If you can initialize a project, you should initialize a project. So that makes sense. So in that case, let's get these 3 templates to our code base: a React, a Next, and a Node.js project. I think these 3 are good enough for now. And then move on to the next section, which is going to be parsing the responses. I understand it now. What happens is, for those of you who did not get it yet, what is happening is, whenever you're on the front end and you write create a to-do app, before the request goes to the LLM, there is a first request that goes out to /template that needs to figure out, based on this prompt, is this going to be a React application, a Next.js application, or a Node.js application. Based on that, it returns the initial set of files that you need, and the prompt is generated, or something like this is generated. Okay, here is the artifact for that contains the initial set of projects, and there you have all the files for that specific framework. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing the screen, but yeah, for a React project, you need a file called eslint.config.js, which has the eslint config and so on and so forth. So we'll just need this file structure somewhere in our backend for a Node, React, and a Next.js project. Let's say we just do React and Node for now. And then that's going to be the first 2 steps that we already have for, this first step and second step. Everything else might come from the LLM. Cool. Let's do that. Let's try to create some sort of a structure where we're storing these default values. And then we'll understand how do you parse it from the front end. And from there, it's smooth sail, I would assume. So let's do that next. Let's create a folder where we're storing all of these default prompts for various frameworks. All right, one small thing before we proceed to writing the code. I am unsure what this third prompt does. I don't know if we need it. So let me just try and remove it and see, does it work? Does it work the same as without it? and it does not, surprisingly. The thing visually appealing use. I'm ready to help you. Oh, interesting. Oh, well, my bad. The third prompt, let's say, is just the user prompt, and not everything else that was here, which is telling the LLM that everything is deleted. I think. Let's get rid of it, and it seems like it still works. So I'm unsure what the third prompt is needed for. I'm probably not going to use it. And let's go from there. Let's make sure it works completely. Yep, that looks good. npm run dev. Cool. So we're not going to worry about the last prompt. Last prompt will literally be the user prompt, and everything else before we need to initialize for Node.js and Express. So let me create a new folder called defaults, inside which I'm going to add node.ts and react.ts. Export const base prompt equal to can this be a string, I guess. So for React it is this, everything from here to here not being shown to you. Dot ignore. So that's the base prompt for React, which has all the files that you need in a base React project. And around this point, we need to introduce the base prompt. So let me just write this for now. Base underscore prompt. And similarly here, sorry, not here. I need the base prompt for React. So let me, sorry, for Node.js. So let me go back to Bolt, inspect, network tab, create a Node.js backend for to-do app. And let's look at the default chat that goes out. Here is the artifact. Let's look at it. What does it look like? It looks something like this. Yeah, so everything else looks good other than this extra prompt. So let me go to node.ts, export const base prompt equal to, I flipped the files. This should be present here, and this should be present in react.ts. Also, this should probably just be a, I don't know, single string. Yeah, that looks decent. So if you look at it, I mean, if I just parse this correctly, it says bolt artifact create the project files, bolt action create the first file index.js, which looks something like this. Run it as a comment followed by console.log some Node.js version. And the other file is package.json, which looks something like this, pretty simple. Cool. That's the base prompt for React and Node.js. Now comes the very first question. When the user gives us a prompt, we need to figure out, is this a React project I want to build or is this a Next.js project? Based on that, we send the request to ChatGPT or whatever, Claude. So let's slowly start to convert this into an Express application. Let me install Express and create a quick HTTP server here. App.get, const app equal to express app.get/template, which means give me the template given this prompt. Probably let's do a post so we can just access it in the body. Const prompt equal to rec.body.prompt, and here I need to basically ask most probably Claude or an LLM. Okay, please tell me whether this is React or Next.js or React or Node.js. So this would probably be return either Node or React based on what do you think this project should be. Only return a single word, either Node or React. Do not return anything extra. And the question that I'm going to send is the question is going to be, sorry, 1 second. Let me just move the bottom bar to my other window. There you go. Let's see. It should probably be the prompt that the user has. So prompt, and hopefully this returns, either this doesn't need to stream anymore. So what was the other API? Dot send dot create and somewhere in this response we'll have const answer equal to response dot content dot response dot content. Is that it? Which will be either React or Node. So now if answer is not equal to React or and the answer is not equal to Node, that means we have a problem. The LLM has returned us something weird. Content block array of 0 dot text, I would say, of 0. There we go. Probably text is not using content block. Content as content block. Oh, not content block, sorry, text block. All right. .json 403.json message. You can't access this, or whatever. There's an error. Return else you read the current prompt and return it to the user, whether the default prompt for Node.js or React. So fs, let's import fs. I'm writing extremely ugly code. This should be structured well in various files. I'm not doing that, but you should do that. Read file, dir name, slash defaults slash, oh, oopsie daisy. It doesn't need to be this fancy. We export it as a variable here. So import base prompt as node base prompt from /defaults/node and base prompt as React base prompt from /defaults/React. And यहाँ पे I'm going to say if answer is React, return res or res.json. Prompt is going to be, or prompts is going to be the default underscore prompt comma React base prompt, where the default prompt is this very big string that we usually send. Okay, you need to create a very clean website. React ke cases mein you need to tell it ki create a very clean website. In case of Node, you don't need to tell it because it's not creating a website. So let me create a, there we already have a prompt.ts. So let me export const base underscore prompt. रखवा दो वहीं. And let me get it over here. This needs to have the base prompt, but Node.js does not. Node.js simply needs to have the node prompt. There we go. Return. And then lastly, अगर इन दोनों में से कोई भी नहीं आया, LLM returned you something else, then sure, you don't have to do anything. Cool, let's try it out. And max tokens here needs to be, I don't know, 200. That's more than enough because it'll only return you Node or React. Let's see it in action. Did I add? I did add it. Postman. Let's go to localhost :3000. New HTTP request. Send a post request over to localhost :3000/template. That was the one, right? Template. And let's send the prompt as well. JSON. Create a to-do app. Now, hopefully this returns me the scaffold or the defaults for a React application. The server is dead. Let's rerun the server. Send a request. And again, the same thing happens because I am not listening on a specific port. I need to have the endpoint and I need to do app.listen 3000. Now let's try it. Send, and hopefully, yeah, there you go. I get back the prompts for a React project. But if I say create a Node.js app for my to-do app or backend for my to-do app, then hopefully it returns me the defaults for a Node.js application. There you go. We're pretty good. Cool. Donuts are here for everyone. So I'm going to grab one and be back. All right. One small thing, their templates gave some more context to the LLM. So let's add that context here as well. Which is going to be problem is the UI needs just the artifacts. So let's do this. Prompts and UI prompt. So basically, in the end, in the UI, we need to create just the files. We don't need the prompt over there. We just need this. Okay, bhai, for Node.js, these are the files that you have to create on the front end. For React, these are the files that you have to create on the front end. We don't want any extra thing on the front end. नहीं तो हम पार्स करके उन स्टेप्स को रन नहीं कर पाएंगे. We need to run these steps one after the other, right? These are nothing but steps that need to run. A bolt action type file index.js. An index.js file needs to be created with this content inside. This is what the front end needs to create these files in a web container. Index.ts, the model needs some more data. So the prompt that will get forwarded to the model will have, the base prompt followed by before the React prompt, we need that, default statement followed by one more statement, which looked something like this. There we go. Probably doesn't make sense for us. So this follow-up place statement, but okay, we'll keep it. Like these files don't make sense for us. .bolt/prompt because we don't have one like this. Feel free to remove it. And same thing here. So we copy the whole prompts and UI prompts. UI prompts are simply going to be base. Don't even need the base prompt, just the React base prompt. And here again, the UI prompt is simply going to be this, but the LLM prompt is going to be fairly comprehensive. So something like this. Prompts. Cool. This needs to get forwarded to the LLM. This needs to be parsed by the UI so the UI can start to build the initial project. Great. Next steps include another endpoint that will let the user actually send the data and stream it back. So this endpoint is done. The template endpoint is done. And we saw in Postman it works as well. Right now it returns this. Now it will change. Let me restart. Now it returns me two things. The prompts that we need to forward to the LLM eventually, and the UI prompt. Okay, the UI needs to see this and render all of these files in a web container. The next step for us is going to be creating the main endpoint. After the user generates the prompt, they first hit this template endpoint. That's what we saw here as well. If you go to bold.new and start to create a new website, the first request goes to a template endpoint to figure out whether is this a React project or a Node.js project. Create to-do app. And if I click on run, you will notice the first request goes to template. This one we've created. The next one goes to the LLM that actually starts to build it. So the next request is this /chat endpoint, I think this one right here. So this is what we have to implement next, where we'll forward the prompts. The user prompt with, create a pretty UI, the initial files that are there, and then what the user actually wanted, which in this case is create a to-do application. So let's do that next. Let's implement the chat endpoint.
All right, let's build the chat endpoint next. Whenever you are sending a request over to Bolt, for example, create a new course selling app, let's say, the message first goes out to the /template endpoint to figure out whether is this a React project, a Node project, what should be the starting template. And then there's a request that goes out to the chat endpoint, which is the real message that goes to the LLM. And the LLM sort of responds back with the initial set of files, whatever the LLM thinks you need to make. So if you look at this, again, the initial message over here is the project files in case of a React project, the basic React boilerplate. That includes ESLint.config, v.config.json, app.tsx, things like these. Then the second prompt is please create a very clean design. The third prompt is what the user wants to build. For example, create a new course selling app. So we need to do the same thing. We need to forward these three messages to the LLM. We need to create an endpoint that the user can hit. And when they hit it, we forward the request to the LLM, get back the response, return it to the front end. After it comes to the front end, we need to parse it on the front end and, make sure a website like this appears. But before that, we first need to create a chat endpoint. So let's create a app.post/chat where we'll get a bunch of messages from the user. What was the schema of the messages? Let's see. Let me click on network again. Make it dark mode. Payload messages. So there is a key called messages, which means const messages. Let me zoom in a bit. Equal to rec.body.messages. And once you have these messages, all you have to do is forward them to an Anthropic. It's actually fairly simple. The same thing that's happening here needs to happen here. Only thing is the prompt needs to be get system prompt, which is this thing right here, the very big prompt which says you are Bolt, an AI expert AI assistant. You have to return response in this specific format. And the messages need to be what the front end gave us as such. So forward the messages over to the LLM, get the response. Let's log the response for now and see what comes back, and we'll go from there. Rest.json, let's just return something empty. All right. Yeah, that looks like a good start. Let's go over to Postman and try to see does this do what we think it's supposed to do. Backend npm run dev to start the backend, go to Postman and send a request to /template first. Let's say we want to create a Node.js application for let's start with the React application. Create a front end for my course selling app. Send. I hopefully get back a bunch of prompts. The first one being create a very pretty website. The second one being here are the initial set of artifacts, and UI prompts we can ignore for now. So these are the two prompts we need to forward again in the next request. So let me copy them. Let me send a request to /chat now, where the body has messages, which is an array. The first key being type user or role user, I would say role user. Let's confirm role user, and then content being the initial prompt, which was create a pretty website. Oopsie daisy, that's a lot. That looks good. Just, this much. Let me get the second one and remove it. There we go. That's the first message. The second message needs to be again role user content. Now the second part, which was these are the initial set of messages. Same चीज़ तो हो रही है यहाँ पे. If you look at it, the first message is the initial set of files, project files. The following files are available to you. The same thing we are passing. Here are the artifacts that contains all the initial project files visible to you. And the second message is for all the designs I ask you to make sure they're very beautiful. That's the second prompt we have. We have them flipped. Doesn't really matter, I think. Even if I want, I can put this below also. Either way, the response should be similar. Role user. Now comes the main prompt, which is content, create a course selling app front end. And now let's see what the LLM returns. Send a bad request because you cannot. Oh, JSON is messed up. Let's see what we're doing wrong in the JSON. Role content messages. I don't see anything wrong here. 626, very hard for me to tell. So JSON validator online. There we go. Something is up on this line. I don't know what's up, but something is up with this line. Did I miss a comma? Oh, I have an extra comma there. That makes sense. Let me remove this comma. There already was a red squiggly here. Send. All right, let's see what the backend returns. There we go. Max token length reached. Didn't return much. What's my max token length here? Oh, it's 200. That's my bad. This should be really big. Let's try that one more time. The max token length was 200, so it got restricted very early. Let's try it one more time. This time, if you look at it, again, we should stream the response. Right now, we're getting the full response in one go. That's not great. If you stream the response, the front end can slowly see the response. Abhi kya hoga ki the request goes out, and after the full response has been made by the LLM, you see it together we should fix that. We should make sure the backend starts to stream the messages slowly as they come by. All right, we'll wait for this to happen and then we look at the response. Right, let's inspect the response. It looks something like this. First, it says, I'll help you create a modern course selling website with a clean and professional UI, yada, yada, yada. Then it says bolt artifact, ID equal to course platform, title equal to course selling platform. Artifact being the top level thing, basically the thing that appears over here, creating a modern course selling application. And iske andar one by one, all the steps are present. Step 1, for example, being create a 𝗟𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗶 file, which looks something like this. Then create a hero.tsx file that looks like this. Then create a, let's keep going, course grid. Yeah, a bunch of files that you need to create, plus, you know, some extra characters. So it's pretty much done. The backend is done. The backend is returning you the files that you need to create on the front end now. Yahan pe, you have to, based on the response from the LLM, run all of these steps inside a web container and make sure, you know, this is what you see finally, or the file, the data that the LLM is returning gets dumped onto all of these files and finally gets compiled to be able to preview something like this. So the next step is going to be taking the response from the LLM and parsing it on the front end and making sure something like this appears. So that's the harder bit now. I would assume that the hardest bit of this application is building the front end, where the LLM returns you data in some weird XML format. You need to parse it. All those commands need to run over here, appear over here on the left sidebar as well. And also on the right, you need to see them in an editor. So let's do that next. Next up, we're going to spend some time on the front end. We'll build a very basic front end, interact with the backend endpoints, dump the data from the LLM on the front end initially. Then we'll see how we can dump those things inside a web container. How can we create a final preview over here and show the user the website that they've created. Let's get into that next. All right, what better way to build the front end other than using Bolt itself? So let's use Bolt to create our initial version of the front end for Bolt. Let's see how it performs. Create a website that lets me create other websites. So the landing page should have a input box where user can fill a prompt, and after that the user should get redirected to a new page with files on the left and with steps on the left to execute and a file explorer on the right. Let's see how that performs. Can I use Bolt to create the front end for Bolt? What is it doing in the file explorer? It has all the, okay, it's not using any library. Probably file is, let's see, where is file? It's not built yet. Okay, there's file explorer.tsx, no file.tsx, we'll see. All right, that looks pretty decent actually. Describe the prompt, and when you click on generate the prompt, it has all the steps on the left. It has a file explorer on the right. That looks decent. File explorer doesn't collapse folders, and explorer doesn't show the contents of the file when clicking on it. Also make everything in dark mode. Here comes the biggest problem with LLMs. I think the code it will write will be highly verbose. It may just take me a lot of time to understand and structure it a way I would want, but I could be wrong. So we'll see. I've never used Bolt for a production app. So it would be good to see how hard is it to understand their code and make changes on top. Like I'm sure at some point you have to eject out of it. You can't keep using Bolt for during your engineering cycle. Probably a great thing to use initially, and then you probably move. If you have to use AI, you move over to something like what's that called? Cursor. Not that I've used that either. I mostly spend my time using Supermaven. But okay, that's enough talk. Let's see how this performs. Cool, that looks decent. Create a to-do app, click on generate website. These are the steps. And the file explorer looks decent. The only problem is it doesn't show the file contents. Oh, it does in a very weird way. Let me try one last thing. Use Monaco to show the editor, show the contents on the right side. That way I can see the code directly next to the file explorer. Also have a section called preview, have 2 tabs with titles code and preview. Preview should take me to a preview of the website. Yeah, we're basically just trying to clone Bolt using Bolt. It's not as pretty as what Bolt looks like, but I think that's a solvable problem. Does package.json have Monaco? Yeah, it does. So hopefully now we have what we need. All right, create a to-do app and code. I don't see file explorer is messed up. Package.json opens package.json level. Open something weird, but that's fine. Preview. There we go. That looks decent. I think this is the point where I eject out, even though let me ask it to fix the file explorer. It's hovering at the bottom of the screen. Steps should take 25% width. File explorer, other 25%. Code 50%. Let's see if it does it. That doesn't look too bad. Again, there are a few problems. File Explorer should appear here and not here. But I'll just fix it locally. I think at this point we can eject out. So open the code base, copy it over, paste it here. So I had a front-end folder initially and I don't need it anymore. I'm going to replace it with what Bolt gave me. That's going to be my front-end. And yeah, we'll start to build from here. Can get rid of .bolt. I can go to source/app.tsx. Let me open the terminal, and the backend is running. Let me start the front end as well. That seems to be working. Let's explore the pages. The landing page takes you to home, where we have a bunch of text followed by the text area. So let me on change equal to set prompt. Okay, so it's storing everything in this prompt variable, handle submit. Here I need to first hit the template. So I'm going to create a new file called config.ts. Export const backend URL equal to localhost /3000. And here I'm going to send a, let me add Axios to make my life a little easier. Let's make this an async function and write Axios dot post slash backend endpoint slash template const response equal to await this and send the prompt inside. I don't know what the backend expected. This is why you need TRPC, but the backend expects message. So prompt dot trim, and here is where you get the files, right? So you should navigate to the other page. What we can do is yeah, we can probably navigate to the builder page with the prompt. Oh, there you go, state prompt. That looks perfect. Actually, let's just go to the builder.tsx and do all of this over there. So let's not make this an async function again. Builder.tsx will have prompt as an input. So here, let me remove all the initial steps for now. Make it an empty array. Like these are the hard-coded steps that they had. I'm going to replace this with file items. I'm going to replace, oh well, I need one of these just to make sure I understand the structure. Ooh, this is like fairly complex structure. app.tsx, package.json, type folder path/source, which has two children. Let's just keep it this way. Files are fine. Here, let me add an effect. Okay, when this renders for the first time, const response, let me call init and define an I should define it separately, but this is fine for now. Hit the backend with on the template endpoint with the prompt, get the response, and if you remember, what did the response return us? The response returned us something like this: prompts and UI prompts. So const prompts comma UI prompts equal to response.data. So what you have to do now is the UI prompts, which is basically all of this bolt artifact ID followed by a bunch of things. These are all the steps that we need to follow. Step one is, whatever, creating the project files, or, we can call it project files, and then bolt action type equal to file name equal to this thing, create a file. We need an XML parser basically that parses all of these and converts them into these steps, the steps array that we had. The UI prompts is the bunch of things that we need to do on the UI now, create the files, so on and so forth. And these are the things we need to forward to the LLM, the prompts. So let's do this. Let's first send the message to the other endpoint that we had. Const steps response equal to await axios.post backend URL / chat. And let me pass over some messages, which will be the messages that came from here, the prompts that came in the initial request, comma, the user prompt. Sorry, this will be a little complicated. Dot map the prompts that came from the backend, and this thing dot map role user, and how did we send the message there? Role user content, the content. So content would be X, or let's just call it content. All right, that looks decent. Steps response. These are the next set of steps that come. The first set of steps are these, and iske baad more steps will come from the LLM. So I need to create a function called parse steps or parse XML, which again should be in a different, let's just create it in a different file. I'm going to use the worst name for it called utils.ts, or probably steps.ts is a better name for it. And yahan pe, firstly, I'm going to move out the steps interface. The step interface exists in types anyway, so that's fine. Here I'm going to define a function, export function parse XML. So what is this function supposed to do? Parse input XML and convert it into steps. For example, if the input looks something like this, let's see. There we go. Whoopsie daisy. That's quite an input. Yeah, let's remove files from here. That's a very big input. So let's just try to make it smaller. Globals, and that's good enough. And one file is also good enough. So let's get rid of everything else /bold action. There we go. For example, if the input looks like this, there is a bolt top level artifact followed by a bolt action, followed by the contents, followed by a /bolt action, followed by a /bolt artifact. If this is the input, then the output needs to be a bunch of steps. What is the step config look like? ID, title, description, status, and code. So it needs to be an array with title, project, files. No need for a description, I would say. And the second one would be, let's say the status is whatever, pending, because it hasn't yet been done. And second step would be title, create file. In fact, let's make this slightly more descriptive. Type would be create enum. Step type would be either create file or create folder or edit file, or I don't know if delete file needs to be there, but probably it does. And lastly, run script. There we go. These are the five type of steps you can have. These are the 5 things the LLM might ask you to do. So type for this one going to be create eslint.config.js, and type is going to be step type dot create file, and the contents are going to be, which is another thing you need here. Okay, what exactly needs to, or code is probably a better this thing name for it. Okay, the code that needs to go into the file is going to be this. That looks decent. And yeah, maybe let's add one more bolt action, which is going to be a npm run dev sort of a script. Bolt action is just how does it return back scripts to you? So for that, probably need to go to prompt dot, there we go, bolt action type equal to shell. And here I am going to return a third type, which needs to be title, run command, and then code is probably going to be node index.js, the command that you have to run, and type is going to be run script. So stepped type dot run script. There we go. This is the how this specific function should parse the XML. The input can have strings in the middle. They need to be ignored. So it will take a, I would call it response as an input, and needs to parse the response, which looks something like this, and return these steps. So here is where I will again flip on. I mean, I can write this myself also, but probably not worth spending some time here. We probably need some sort of an external library to parse XML, and then just format it back into these files or these steps. So I can do it myself also, but the easiest would be to either turn on Super Maven like I did, or just ask Claude to finish this function. Give it the step type and maybe even the step interface, and ask it to finish this function. Then we can read through it. Feel free to use a XML parsing library. Now, for some reason, these guys use XML. I would have just used JSON. I would just asked the LLM to return me data in XML format. But for these guys, they return data in XML, or they expect the LLM to return data in XML, which is not bad, but at the same time, you have to write the step that parses the XML. All right, let's see. That looks sort of wrong. Action._. Cool, let's see. Firstly, it uses XML2.js. So I'm going to npm install XML2.js and hope it runs on the client. There's a high probability it doesn't. Probably import it to the top of the file. Add its types. Hope they exist. Yeah, there we go. All right, that looks decent. Step, I can import step ID equal to 1. Parser dot parse string async. Now this function does not exist. Dot parse string promise. Await it. Make it an async function. All right. Artifacts equal to result dot bolt artifact. If not artifact, return steps. If there is an artifact, steps dot push the artifact. Step type needs to be exported. Action equal to array dot thing artifact dot bolt action. All right. It depends on whether or not what the XML library returns you, which in this case it seems like it returns you an array of bolt actions. If your input looks like this, if it has 2 bolt actions, that is what appears over here. If there is a single one, it just creates a array with that single element. And then for every action, if action type is file, then you push this step. If it is shell, then you push this step and return it. That looks decent. At this point, I really need a test to test this out. So what's the easiest way to run a test for this? This is in the front end. Also, what is this? Action._. That's probably the contents inside then, which is the file in some case and something else in a different case. I just also don't know if /n ऐसे का ऐसे ना आ जाए इसमें. I don't want /n to come as such in the string. Probably won't. So I think we'll be fine. ठीक है. The parse XML function is done. I need to test the parse XML function. Also, it should return a promise of step array because now this is an async function. Let's see. Let's go to the front end again. That's app.tsx and try to render parse XML, stringify it. And give it, that very complicated prompt that we had, and see, does it create the right steps or not on the front end? So what were the contents? Yeah, this looks decent. Let's see if it's able to, ignore the strings initially, directly hop to the bolt artifact and, go from there. All right. Copy this, References types. All right, this is a little more complicated. Type equal to file path equal to source / this thing. Okay, that's just the content. Never mind. Cool. That looks decent. Paste it and hope this very big prompt gets passed into steps correctly. So let me start the front end. There's some semicolon somewhere that's in builder.tsx. So builder.tsx. Is there a red squiggly somewhere? I don't see it. 77. Oh, I haven't saved the files. Let me save it. I'm not awaiting parse XML. So let me, I cannot await it. So let's do this. Let's steps equal to parse XML, the whole thing. And here I'll do JSON.stringify of steps and make sure I'm also awaiting it. Now you can't await directly here. Oh, how do I debug this? Yeah, let me just do this instead. Parse XML. Let me remove this dot then console.log x. There we go. Let's try it out. Let's see, does the front end return me the steps one after the other? It's still failing. It isn't. If I go to the front end and try to look at the console, parse XML, remove all listeners is not a function. All right. Cool. So I'm not able to create the parser. So let's look at XML2.js documentation. And does it run in the browser? Is my first question. Thing usage no tutorial. My assumption right now is parse XML2.js, that it doesn't run inside the browser, but I could be wrong. Let's see. The fake solution is here. Let's see. All right, let's see if that does it. npm install events. I'd be very surprised if that fixes it. I'm not surprised. I am surprised, and at the same time, error parsing XML, non-white space before tag. So yeah, that's the problem. I was hoping it's able to parse the whole thing with some, extra data before. Seems like that's not the case. Let's remove it and see, does it do it now? Inappropriately located doc type declaration. Yeah, let's remove all of this as well. Right now, trying to give it pure XML, or hoping that this is pure XML. Seems like it isn't. Oh. What did it say again? Yeah, the problem is this is XML only. Probably need this here. I could be wrong. Let's try it. Nope. Cool. We need a better parser. We can't use XML to JS. Partly because this isn't really XML. Like, it has some contents before, some contents after. We need a better parser. Claude, my friend. Okay, so my XML can be messed up, can have some text before or after. Can we write some custom code ourselves to parse it? Here is an example. And here is an example of, the input that we might get, which is not pure XML. It can have other things as well. We need to parse out the XML from it. This is where I would want to use an LLM, give it this and, make it clean up the XML. But yeah, that looks decent. That's exactly what we want. This XML is a match equal to responses.match this thing, and then, match it via regex. That works. And then bolt action. Yeah, I think regex is fine. So do some. All right, there's just a test for it. Let's see. Regex based XML parser. I don't hate it because of a few reasons. Biggest reason being we don't have to depend on an external library anymore. And I think for our use case, regex works. Like we can catch all the edge cases using regex. In this case, it's trying to get all the bolt artifact XML, whatever you want to call it, sections and the bolt action sections, and trying to get them via regex and iterating over them and pushing them to the steps. Let's see, does that work? If I refresh, it totally goes bonkers on me. Oh, it's not a promise anymore. It's a simple function. Doesn't need to be awaited. So there's no need for a dot then. I can simply log const x equal to this thing and this thing, refresh. Oh, there we go. That looks like something. Project files, create agent configurator. That's exactly what we need. Cool. Yeah, that looks great. Main.tsx, which has all of this. Perfect. We're able to parse out the response from GPT and convert it into, the steps that we need to show the user on the left. That's exactly what happens on Bolt as well, right? You see all the steps on the left, things like create this file, create this file, create this file. We have all of those steps in an array. Now we just need to push them to a state variable and go from there. All right. So this looks decent. Let me remove this from here and remove this as well. Builder we've written all the code already. Prompts, UI prompts, step response equal to this thing. At this point, I can set steps, set steps. At this point, I can set steps to be UI s dot UI prompts dot map, or I actually don't need this. I don't know why I did this. UI prompts dot map x parse XML x. There we go. Hopefully that does it. Hopefully that does it. Set steps to be, you don't need this. This much is good enough. All the UI prompts converted to, because if you look at all the, actually, what does UI prompts have? Message template, gets back prompts followed by UI prompts. I think this is one then. UI prompts, it's just one. So doesn't really matter. I don't need to do a dot map. Basically, most probably there'll be a single element in UI prompts, but this is also fine. This will return an array, which is what we actually this. I can actually just do this for now. We know the UI prompts will only have a single element initially, so we can just do this. The single element being all the steps to create either a Node.js project or a React project, whatever boilerplates we have. So UI prompts of 0 is what we need to parse and convert it to steps. Set that to the steps variable, and hopefully that's it. Let's see. Create a to-do application in React, and that shows nothing. Template failed. I think there's a course error. I would assume there's a course error. Indeed there is. So let's go back here, stop the backend, go to backend/index.js, do a import course from course, and do a app.use course, do an npm install course. Alrighty, that looks decent-ish. Probably need to add its types as well. Start the backend again, start the front end again, and this time give it a prompt, create a to-do app, generate my website plan, and template fails. Why? The backend is down. What request am I sending? Messages, create a to-do application. What do I expect? I expect prompt. So that's my bad. Let's go back to builder.tsx and replace this with prompt and try it one more time. Create a to-do app. Failed again because the backend is down. Start again, go back here, create a to-do app, try it one more time. Backend is up this time, and something happened. Oh, there we go. We got all the steps on the left. Create the project files, create eslint.config.ts, index.html, package.json, so on and so forth. Now what we have to do is actually make sure these files are created on the right. So all of these steps need to be executed one after the other. Also, this needs to be slightly smaller. It's like taking too much space. But anyways, that's for later. File Explorer is messed up. So let's fix the UI first. Quickly go to builder.tsx and see what's up. Step lists followed by File Explorer. I don't want that. I want File Explorer to be right next to this thing. So I'd probably do save this. File Explorer goes away. That looks decent. These are the steps. File Explorer needs to come here and then the third thing. So can I do this? Calc steps list, call span 1, call span 4. So can I wait, call span 1, call span 2. So can I simply do this? Call span 1. Yeah, there we go. File Explorer is here, code is over here. That looks decent. Cool. So we have the steps. For some reason, don't take the full height. Made it even worse. h-full. Yeah, we can fix it. The steps are very big in size. So let's just remove some of the padding. There we go. That looks much better. And yeah, we can set all of them to be done. So initially, when you get all the steps, dot map x dot x comma done is true, or whatever it expects. Oh shit, shoot. Create a to-do Node.js backend. Now if I ask it to just create the Node.js backend, I would assume the steps would be smaller. Is the backend down again? No, that looks decent. I see the file. I don't see the steps anymore. Let's try it one more time. Create a to-do Node.js backend. Network. Create website. Template returns me a UI prompt. Oh, there you go. Project files index.js package.json. Why does this look bad again? There we go. Okay, 3 steps. That looks perfect. Types. What do you expect it to say? Status. I would say completed. So it is not done true. It would be status completed. This would be a step. And the effect again does not run. So to do app Node.js backend, generate it, and to do app Node.js backend. Why do I not see the steps? Network tab. To do app Node.js backend, network tab. Template does return me things. Why don't I see the steps here anymore? Is it not able to parse the XML? UI prompt of 0.map is not a function. UI prompts of 0.map is not a function. UI prompts of 0. Okay, set steps. Oh, sorry, the map needs to come here. Convert this into the set of steps and then map over to completed. There we go. So all three of these are done. Now we need to make sure the same files appear over here. So let's create a function called pass steps. Okay, steps aa to gaye. Actually, this should just be status pending only. And then we should have another effect. Use effect. Okay, anytime the steps change. Actually, yeah, we basically need to asynchronously process these steps. आपको LLM ने बता दिया कि ये करना है. Then we need to pick this and make sure the file is created here. Then mark it as done. Pick this, make sure the file is created here, mark it as done, so on and so forth. So let's create a function that takes the next step to execute as an input and starts to execute them one by one. The step could be either creating a file over here or running something inside a shell. So let's do that next. All right, the next step is, given these set of steps have been created, we need to push them over to the file system. We need to push them. Yeah, we just need that. We need them to appear over here to begin with. And then we'll see when the user clicks on it, how we open the UI over here. And then the next step is going to be making sure the commands are also running. If npm run dev is what the user wants to run, it runs somewhere in some web container. We'll get to what web containers are so that the user can preview the code as well and see the React project running. So step one is fairly simple. These files that we have generated, this files array, needs to now be generated from the steps. So the step says step one is create eslint.config.js. We need to push to this array, something like this. eslint.config.js needs to be created with on this specific path with this specific contents. So let's see what the schema looks like. Okay, it's the folder followed by the children. The schema of the folder is a little weird. It's not weird. It's pretty good. The root folder is /source. That's what we see over here, which has all the individual these things. So for us, we need something similar. File item. Okay, it's already defined. So let me just make this empty initially. Let me just comment it if I'm being honest. All right, files are initially empty. When steps change, anytime the steps array changes, we need to run something. So let's do this. Use effect steps. Steps dot find a step that is not yet done. So status equal to pending, something like this. Const step equal to this thing. Given this specific step has been found, this step, whichever is the most top level step that hasn't yet been executed, we need to do if step dot type equal to step type dot create file. Then we need to create or update that file, I would say. Might happen that the file already exists. So const file exists equal to this needs to be this comma files dot find x dot path equal to step dot. Okay, we store a bunch of things. We don't store the path though. So I need to go back to steps.ts parse XML, pushes a bunch of things. The input looks like this with the type equal to file path equal to something. Do we ever put the file path somewhere? We don't. So let's add that as a property as well. Go to types.ts. We can make the type even more comprehensive. I'm doing this a very flexible way where I'm going to add path as an optional string here. But ideally you should make sure if the type is of create file or create folder or edit file or delete file, only then a path is needed. If it is of the type run script, then path is not needed. You can make TypeScript more stricter that way. We're not doing that though. So yahan pe I'll just add another field called path is file path, and for shell we don't care. Then we will go back here and say x.path equal to step.path. If file already exists, then we need to update its contents. So we need to find the file over here in this original array. Yeah, I don't love that this original array is nested. It would be nice if it's an array of elements. Either is fine though. We just have to write some splitting logic. If file exists, then files not fine. Actually, that won't work. Const parsed path equal to file path or step dot path dot split slash or empty array. If name equal to this thing, children, and then name equal to this thing, children, and name equal to this thing. So we have to reach that specific point and update or add it. So if files, yeah, it would be nice if this was an object indexable via the path rather than an array. Const current file structure equal to dot 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 files, and for let I equal to 0, I less than parsed path dot length I plus plus. If current file structure dot find x dot path equal to parsed path of I, that means something like this already exists. Then we either need to update or keep going from there. If this, yeah, this is the place where I would just love if AI writes this code for me. I don't have to do it. Dot find agar ye mil gaya, if we get the top level this thing, then we'll find uske children. If there's another, I can just say current file structure equal to current file structure. If this thing is this thing, then I can say current file structure is equal to current file structure. Let's make this a let. Array file item is could have children, so that looks fine. Why is there a problem? Undefined. Okay. I can add an exclamation here because I know the thing on the right definitely exists. Still gives me an error. File item is missing the following properties: array x colon number. Oh, it's an array. Const. Yeah, I'm going to change the schema of files. Rather than being a file item array, like that. This is where I hate that AI has written this. So I have to conform to its schema rather than writing my own. Find this thing. Dot children. All right. Yeah, if it doesn't exist, yeah, this like requires recursive code that I should write. This will be the most complicated bit of this application, like going through the diff, basically what currently exists in my file system. Let's say the AI tells us to create a new file at /source/components/UI/buttons.tsx. So this complex object we need to now modify to have /source as the top level thing, and then /source/components as the second thing, and then /source/components/button.tsx as the third thing. So yeah, updating the final array files to look like the original files plus the new thing that the AI has returned is going to be the hard bit. All right, let me just write this and just show you the final thing. Right, it took me around 30 minutes to write it. I've written it fairly ugly. I think you can fix it and make it cleaner. But now all these steps run one after the other. And once these steps run, they get added to the folder structure here. And when you click on a file, you can see the contents over here. So that's a great start. If I go back to the code and show you, I've basically written an effect that runs whenever steps or files change. So anytime the files, doesn't really matter if the files change, this effect shouldn't run then, but steps, we need files. That is why you need to add it as a dependency. Hopefully you understand that. Basically, agar ye nahi denge, so you might get stale files in here, which is why you need file as a dependency. Whenever you use a state variable inside an effect, it's a good idea to add it as a dependency. But really when this should trigger is when the steps change. So whenever the steps change, which means the AI returned you some extra steps to do, at that point, you should filter out all the pending steps, the ones that AI has given you, you haven't yet executed, and execute them one by one. So the first step, for example, now this gets a little complicated, the code. What's happening here is, if you do find a step, then you set this update happened variable to be true. And based on that, eventually, if an update has happened, we update the state variables to avoid an infinite render. Otherwise, what will happen is files and steps would update, that would retrigger the effect, that would update the files and steps, so on and so forth. So to avoid this infinite rendering, what we've done is we've made sure only if any update has happened, only if steps have been changed or the files have been changed, do we update the state variables, else we don't. And here what we're doing is we're filtering out all the pending steps and then executing them one by one. And this gets highly recursive. For example, if step.type is create file, if the user wants to create a file, then we find the parsed path, we convert it into an array basically. For example, if they want to create a file here, parsed path would be this. Current file structure is just a copy of the original files, because this is what we'll be updating. Just say we run through these steps, this current file structure is what we'll iterate through and eventually reach, the file I want to update. For example, if I want to update source/component/UI/app.tsx, in every iteration of this while loop, this current folder structure will keep on getting changed. Try to log it and understand it. I've written this all myself, and as I said, it's a little ugly. तो मेरे को समझ आ रहा है, मैं समझा नहीं पाऊंगा type of code है ये, because I've just written it my way, just like you solve a DSA problem. It's probably a fairly obvious DSA problem only, given a files array and a bunch of directories that you have to add, for example, source/package.json or source/component/ui.json. How do you update the files array? And the answer is, at least the way I've done it, is highly recursively. This while loop will go through source/components/ui and finally reach the final file. And in the process, if there's an empty folder, create that folder. In the process, if there's a file that needs to be created, it'll create it. If the file already exists, it'll update it. So try to go through this code yourself. Let me take you through it a little bit, but as I said, I've written it fairly complex. There's probably an easier way to write it. So if not parsed path.length, it probably means you've reached the final file, source/component/app.tsx. So यहाँ पे, if the file doesn't exist, you push it to the current file structure. If it does exist, you just update its contents. And similarly, in the else, let folder equal to this thing, you reach the folder. You find if the folder already exists. If it does not exist, you create the folder. And then you move to the folder's children in the next iteration, and then try to create a folder here, and then create a folder inside it, and then finally the file. So that's what's happening inside this while loop. This while loop is pretty much iterating over source, and then components, and then if there was a components thing here, and then app.tsx. In every iteration, you go through each one of these and try to update the global files array. That's what's happening here. And by the end of it, the files array that we have gets updated. The files state variable that we have gets updated. And that's what appears over here. That code AI had written. Okay, given a files array, how does it render over here? How does clicking on it render a file here? And now what is happening is if the AI returns us a bunch of steps, these steps get populated in this directory structure. Even if it's a slightly complex directory structure, has one directory inside another directory inside another directory, all of them will appear here. You can look at the code over here. The final thing is the preview section now. And also talking back to the LLM, like this is just the initial structure. I haven't yet. We did call the next step is the LLM will give you this is just the bootstrap code, the original code. Iske baad the LLM will tell you, if you remember the code, we also send a request to /chat and get the steps response. So now we need to add the new set of steps. The to-do application looks like this. So let's do that. Actually, that's probably a good next step. At least see the folder structure being populated well, the to-do application being created well, and we can look at the files. Previewing it is a different question, but at least we can look at the files and our code starts to get generated. So let's add a chat box here that the user can put a new message on and, you know, get more and more updates done. But before that, let's just look at how you can create the first to-do response. It probably is already coming. If I go back here and go to the network tab and say create a to-do app, the backend is down. So let me restart the backend and do it again. Template returns me the prompts. Chat will take a long time since, you know, it's creating a full to-do application. So let's wait for its response to come and look at it. Then we'll see how can we add those steps to the next set of steps here and go from there. Oh, well, this is the initial set of steps, and I already see a problem. The steps has a lot of things. Create tailwind.config.js. I don't see tailwind here. tsconfig.json. I don't see. I probably don't see the root folder. Like everything inside the source folder doesn't appear in the file explorer for some reason. Probably an obvious thing I've missed. So we'll look at that. Chat. There you go. Payload preview returns an empty object. There are two problems right now. One is that chat is returning an empty object. Two is things that are in the root folder do not appear over here. So let's first look at what's up with chat. And I think the answer is I never finished the endpoint. Yeah, I need to return this response dot content of 0 dot text, or I don't know, content block text block dot text. Cool, that looks good. Yeah, hopefully now we get the response correctly. And figuring out the other problem, which is root folder ki files aren't getting pushed. Let's go through our infinite while loop, this while loop, and see what's up. For complete root folder files, I would assume this is causing a problem. What was the original thing that we got? Let's see. The original code looked something like this. And here, if I looked at builder.tsx, I could have files in the root folder, right? Files. Yeah, they simply look like this. Name package.json, path / package.json. All right. I think we should be having that as well. Let's log files and see what's up. All right, had to just change one line of code. Original files equal to final answer ref. This original files is what we update the final state variable to be. और ये मैं सिर्फ इसमें कर रहा था in the folder structure. I was not doing it in the file. So what was happening is if there is just a file, the control will only reach here. Then this original files was not getting updated. This was in the else. Now I've added it outside if else and the while loop. So it will always run at least once. And original files will keep on getting updated. That is what we set the final state variable to. ये नहीं समझ आया होगा, खुद से explore करके समझना पड़ेगा ये specific. This specific effect which I've written really long and really ugly. Try to write it yourself. The goal is, given these steps, create a bunch of these files. And yeah, you probably want to try to write it yourself rather than looking at my code, because one, my code is ugly. Two, yeah, we will have the role implementation of this. Create a to-do application. I'll try to clean it up though by the end, so it's more readable. Yeah, backend is up. Create a to-do app. Let's also look at the responses that finally go out. All right, that looks decent. I have the file structure here, source app.tsx. I have all the steps here. The chat endpoint, let's see what it responds with this time. It'll take some time, of course. There we go. The chat endpoint responded back with the response. I'll help you create a beautiful exercise, this thing, and then a bunch of artifacts, which is great. I just hope this has everything, it doesn't cut out. Yeah, this looks pretty good. So अब इस response से हमें next set of steps बनाने हैं कि basically whenever you get the steps response dot data dot response, set steps to be the original steps, comma, parse XML of this thing, dot map x dot x comma status is pending. What's wrong here? Step or status parts example the step array only. Oh, sorry, my bad. Dot. Right. Set steps parse XML dot map. Yeah, that should have done it. There we go. Cool. Set steps to be the original steps and the new prompts के steps, ताकि इसके नीचे all steps जुड़ भी जाएं and they get populated to the front end also. So let's see, does that happen? Can't think of a reason that it shouldn't happen. Create a to-do app, generate template endpoint is not working. From time to time, I'm seeing Claude is timing out for me. Create a to-do app. I need to figure out why that is. But okay, the template endpoint worked. Let's wait for the chat endpoint, and it failed. The backend died. This request would exceed your organization's rate limit of 8,000 tokens per minute. Alrighty, so we're going to wait for a minute. That probably makes sense why the backend is dying. So let's wait for a minute and then restart. We have an organization limit on Claude of 8,000 tokens a minute. I'll just wait for 30 seconds and then try it again. All right, 30 seconds have passed. Let's see. Create a to-do app, send it. Template returns a response. I see the initial set of files, and then we wait for chat to respond. I can't think of a reason that this wouldn't work, like out of the box, but let's see. That's why we need streaming responses, because yeah, if the response is being streamed, then, you know, the UX is much better. All right, let's see. There you go. Create source/type/todo.ts. I see, oh, there we go. I see a source/type/todo.ts. This is what the AI returned me. What else? Use to-dos. So source/hooks/use to-dos. Great. So the AI is giving us a bunch of code. All of that code is getting populated to this sidebar. I can explore that code over here. And that is great. Now let me try one more. We need a follow-up. Like, I should be allowed to ask follow-up questions to the AI. So let me add that really quickly, like a chat box that I can talk to the AI with. And the AI gives me something more. For example, you know, turn into dark mode. Yeah, we can do that also. That is one thing we should do. The other thing we need to do is, the more difficult bit is the preview section. If the user has put a bunch of files here, we need to run the code somewhere. This React project needs to be compiled and, you know, run. So, all right, two more things to do. One is I should be able to ask follow-up prompts. Two, I need to make sure that the preview section works and the thing actually works. So here is where we need to learn about web containers, specifically if you want to build previews, which is what I'm going to build next. As I said initially, you can use a replit-like architecture where all of this code reaches the backend also, and this React project runs on the backend. Or you can run it directly inside the browser. We're taking the second approach. We'll run it directly inside the browser, much more easy to work with, because you can have thousands of people on your website and not bring up any compute, versus the replit approach gets very expensive when it comes to compute. Also, this is just easier to do compared to, you know, spinning up a backend, starting the user's code in a sandbox environment. It's just easier to let the user's code run directly inside the browser. So let's do that next. Let's understand how web containers work. How can you use them over here? Right, web containers. I've not used them ever. That'll be a new thing for me as well. I've read through the code a little bit. So let me just take you through what web containers are and how to use them. It's pretty much an environment in your browser where you can run Node.js code. It's a Node.js, I wouldn't call it a runtime, but yeah, it lets you compile, run Node.js code inside the browser and also create things like HTTP servers, things that you would only expect on a backend. The way to do that is by using this web container API demo app. Actually, that's a really good starting point. Only if their, you know, code was doing something. Interestingly, the downloads have spiked recently. All right, let's look at the docs and try to figure it out. API docs. Get started. Quick start. All right, let's add web containers /API to our React project. I would assume that's where we need to write it, because it lets you run backend on the front end. Create a web container instance. All right, let's do that. Let's probably create a hook or something. Const web container equal to use web container. And let me create a new hooks folder where I'm going to introduce this. Export function, where I'm going to write an effect that runs on mount and boots the web container. Booting it basically means, okay, let's call it here main async function main. How does AI work for me suddenly? Const web container comma set web container, and this I would set to web container instance, and here I would return the web container. Cool. So I've created a hook called use web container that is going to create a new instance of it, boot it, and set it in the state variable, return it. This is what I'm using in builder.jsx. And now what I need to do is, as files keep on getting added, I need to add them to the web container. So requires share, which in turn requires websites that are run on cross origin isolated. Because of that, you need to set these headers. We might have to come back to this. All right, the next thing is web container instance.mount project files. So as more and more files get created, I probably need to run this to be able to mount it. Currently the following is available: read file, reader, rm, write file, mkdir. To load your files in the container, the mount command which will copy them over to the file system. All right, what is the schema of this though? So what I need to do is, whenever I add a new file, so that happens here, the final file, I need to do a web container dot mount, and what does it require as a type? Name followed by directory node, file node, or symlink node. Contents of the file, so name followed by file followed by the contents. So probably something like file dot current folder content, sorry, file contents would be step.code. All right, that gives me a type error. As file node, there we go. Cool, that's how you mount a file. Now I think you can't simply mount a file, you have to mount folders separately as well. So deployment must be through HTTP. This is not necessary when developing on local host. Working with the file system. So creating a web package.json looks like this. It is a multi-level nested object. Similarly, a folder is represented like this. A folder with files is represented as follows: source directory main.js. This thing, all right. Okay. Use the mount method to load a file. A single file can be loaded like this. Multiple files loaded like this. And folders. Folder, add a key directory, and then proceed with adding the files. Okie dokie. Source directory, and then do what you have to do. Mounting to different paths. Generating snapshots. Reading is like this, but writing is not like it. So I think what I've done won't work. This isn't enough. What I can do is, yeah, let's do that. Anytime files change, use effect. Anytime files change, I'll repount the whole thing. So I probably have to, again convert the files array into a very weird format. Format that looks like this. God, this is going to be hard. AI to the rescue. Const original files equal to files. Const out mount structure equal to an empty array. Files.map. Here is where I would have hoped AI would help me. It isn't. So Claude followed by what do we need? We need this to be filled so that by the end of it I can do web container dot mount mount structure, fill this effect given. What are we given? We're given the structure of files. So files look something like this, where file item is this. Yeah, that should do it. This thing, sorry, it's a process file. This thing, file, then for the files, add content directly. I don't know if this works. Yeah, I don't think this works. This is how the file structure should look like. All right, you should code this yourself, by the way. I'm not, because I'll just complicate it again. But you should, if you're cloning this video, you should write this yourself. Let's see. This thing, folder. Yeah, there we go. File, yeah, there you go. That's exactly what we need. Child, file children dot map child. Okay, object from entries child dot name and process file child dot name. That sounds fine to me. Yeah, let's copy the effect. Let's go back here. Replace it. What it is doing is comments are equal to files or voice mount structure to create mount structure of files. And what this is doing is files dot for each file process file which if type is folder, then it is calling mount structure of file dot name is this thing. If it is a file, it's probably not enough for recursive folders. Directory file dot children question mark this thing. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine even for recursive folders. Cool. I should write some tests for effects like these. If I'm not writing the code, it's a good idea for you to write the tests for them, so at the very least you know it works as expected. Cool. I don't know why they have the full path variable here if it's not being used. And that also does not require parent path anymore. That's fine. Cool. Let me just log the thing that finally reaches the web container, console.log mount structure, and make sure it is what it's supposed to be. But yeah, this should mount it inside the web container. All I have to do is run the web container next. So let's go back here, and yeah, I think it should just log. Oh, the front end is down. The whole thing restarted. So let's do to do app one more time. All right, if you look at the console, the error is fine, but okay, source directory app.tsx file index. This is fine. It works for everything inside the source directory. It does not work for everything else. Why is that? Files process file equal to this thing. Files dot for each process file for folder else return this thing. Okay. Yeah, one thing we're missing is if it's a root folder, then don't return, do something else. So what I can do is how do I know if it's the root folder? Process file. Process file comma true is root folder boolean and process file of false. I don't need that. Alright, file comma true, and what is going to happen here is if it is the root folder, then here you have to do something similar. Mount structure of file.name equal to not the directory but the actual contents, which is going to be yeah, basically this. If is root folder, then do this, else return it. All right. Cool. That looks pretty decent. Hopefully, I mean, we'll see. Let's look at the final thing. Oh my god. Yeah, that looks decent now. This gets mounted. Components is a directory, but esl.config is just a file. And hooks is a directory which has users, which is a file. Yeah, that looks good. All right, now let's see what happens here. Unable to create more instances, a bunch of random errors. All right, cool. One thing I should do is just go to app.tsx and remove strict mode. I would assume it's creating more web containers than needed. Now let's try it one more time. Let's go back here. Let's write to do app and see, does the web container complain or does it not complain? It complains. It says failed to execute post worker share requires self dot cross origin isolated. I think this is what they were talking about here. Cross origin embedded policy requires a website that are running to be running on cross origin isolated. Because of that, you'll need to set these headers. All right, let's check configuring headers for a React project. 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 specific page. How do I do it locally? Let's swell to search for React. Next, specific pages. That's Next.js. We have a React frontend. Configure headers on React. Dev server. Wait. Server headers. Specify response headers. Where can I add this? Probably in config.js. So wheat.config.js server headers. All right, there we go. What are the two headers we need to add? And cross origin policy, same origin. Hopefully that does it. Let's restart the application. Let's go back to our, thing right here. Go back to the page. Right, create a to-do app. I look at the logs now, I don't see any errors. That is good, but I've also not mounted anything yet. That's because GPT isn't running for me because the backend is down. So let's try it one more time. Create a to-do app, create it. And if I look at the console, yeah, nothing wrong. Great, the resource was preloaded using preload. Cool, that's fine. The last thing is running the iframe on preview. Maybe also running npm run dev. So let's just go through the docs again. Working with the file system running processes. So yeah, instance.spawn npm install, instance.spawn npm run dev is something we should do. And to be able to, the thing is, it probably comes somewhere in these steps that the LLM returns you. So the LLM tells you project files, a bunch of things. Does it tell you to run npm amp.tsx? Now renders to-do list. Okay, so what we can do is, whenever the user clicks on preview, we can do an npm run dev and maybe an npm install followed by an npm run dev. So let's do that. Whenever the user clicks on preview, they reach this page. And here, there we go. I can just pass web container equal to web container. Let me take that as an input here. And here in an effect, I can do this. Web container dot, what was it? Web container dot spawn npm install. Yeah, let's log it to the screen. Web container dot spawn followed npm install, followed by, whenever this happens, const run process equal to, there you go, that's what we want. Server ready, and then we need this next, but the question is, npm run dev probably is what we need. Package.json. Yeah, dev is good enough. The only thing is, what should be the iframe URL? Running processes. That is fine. Server ready, which is eventually to report close, is opened or closed by a process. Oh, there you go. Port and URL. Probably this URL is where I need to go. But we'll see. Let's try this out. npm install followed by await web container dot spawn npm run dev followed by, when this is ready, console.log URL and then port. Alrighty. Cool. Let's try it out. Let's see, does it get logged? Create a to-do app. I see all of these things. I see all the new files. if you have a proper, not a to-do application yet, but here's something we have. When I click on preview, okay, bunch of things are happening. I see the npm install happening. Hopefully npm run dev happening as well. And there we go. Something weird came. npm install seems to have worked. Npm run dev I'm unsure of. Let's try it out one more time. Go back here, then go back here. npm install works. npm run dev works. I see this. Can I go here, 𝗠:5173? Pop-up blocked. Let's allow that. Connect the project. Could not find project. How about if I go here, connect project? No, there currently is a let's try creating a iframe. I would assume they have docs here somewhere. Is there a demo? Tutorials. Oh, there you go. How do I go to the end of this tutorial? Okay, there you go. That's fine. That's fine. This is what we need. Install dependencies, spawn npm install. Call the function, install dependencies, run the dev server. Oh, there you go. iframe l.source equal to URL. So whenever you get the URL, let's do this. Let's do const URL comma set URL equal to use state empty, and set URL to be URL, and then if URL exists, I am going to say, if it doesn't exist, then we're going to render whatever. Okay, wait for some time. But if URL does exist, then I'm going to create an iframe source equal to URL. There you go. Cool, that should do it. Let's see. Preview. Come on. I see something here. Doesn't look like. Oh, there you go. Fucking A. That's exactly what we needed. That's my to-do application that came from an AI. Plus, and I see it and I can log it. And if I go here, let me just clean up the iframe a bit, make it bigger. All right, that's the iframe. And here I can say width 100%, height 100%. All right, width 100%, 100%. Let's do that. Width equal to 100%, height equal to 100%. All right, that seems like that was easier than I was hoping for. Cool. That's the to-do. Mark it as done. Delete it. All right, let's go back to the website. And here I'm going to write create a course selling app this time, and wait for it. I'm going to sit and hope for the AI to respond. Now, of course, the AI. Oh, there you go. It did respond a little bit. We have the initial bootstrap project. If I go to preview, hopefully it works in a second here. My hope remains hope. Right click, inspect. Open the console. Yeah, this takes a long time. Much longer than I was hoping for. Go back here, and we have a empty application. See, start prompting and see the magic happen. But if I go back to, seems like the request hasn't succeeded yet to get me the course selling application stuff. So I'll just wait. Course selling applications can be hard. So I'm assuming, oh wait, hold on. Create a UI with smooth animations. Yeah, that's the to-do application. I asked for the course selling application, so I'll just wait. There you go. Course selling application is right here in front of you guys. So I asked it to create a course selling application. It was able to create one. I see the contents of it here in app.tsx, data/courses.tsx, so on and so forth. If I click on preview, I can make this easier, but right now it's a little slow, but that's fine. Yeah, it's like 1, 2, 3, more than 3 seconds to generate the preview. It's probably longer than I was hoping for. Console, nothing in the console, that's weird. Preview is taking a long time. Let me do one thing. Let me app.tsx just change something. Let me comment the nav bar, or you can't edit it. Shoot, we don't have that functionality yet. Okay, that's fine. Preview. Come, oh, there you go. Learn Hub. Yeah, I see the website. This is great. Now the only thing that's left is follow-up prompts. These are all the steps that were followed one after the other. It generated this code, and I can also preview this code over here. That is great. The next step is making sure I can ask follow-up questions, create dark mode, convert the code to dark mode, so on and so forth. So let's do that next. Let's add a small input box right below it, like right here, and I can follow up prompt, and then the backend needs to return the new files. The files need to come here, need to get previewed over here. Let's get into that next. Before there, let's try one more example. It's just fun. Create a e-commerce website in dark mode for my candle store. Alrighty, let's see. Initial part is easy. We're not streaming right now, which is why you wait for whatever 30 seconds. The data is being streamed. That also might be a very cool thing to add, because that will be very cool to see here. Okay, files are getting added in real time. This is getting updated in real time. That UX of bold.new is really good. But okay, we will just wait for it to respond back. Let me look at the logs and make sure no limits have been reached, and seems like that's not the case, so we'll wait. Again, the prompt was an e-commerce website for my candle store, I think in dark mode. I'm unsure though, we'll see. Oh, there you go. I got the files. Files look decent, a bunch of things. Go to preview over here. It's going to install all the dependencies. That's going to take some time. We'll wait for it. Keep waiting for it. Yeah, we can make this much faster by having preview like load once and stay alive in the background, so that as I mount new files, it just hot reloads and show me the website, rather than me having to restart it again and again. It'll make it a little faster. All right, logs look decent. Yeah, seems like this has been generated. Seems like web containers are heavily reliant on some server by these 𝗥𝗲𝗶𝗹𝗀𝗀 folks. What would be super funny is if, that doesn't happen though. We checked that in yesterday's class. What I was saying was, it would be super funny if this is just a API on top of something running on a server, but I don't think that happens. I think this does indeed run inside your browser, but it is taking longer than I was hoping for. Something did get generated, is preloading. Go back to the code. go back to the preview. And yeah, now I see the iframe. And there you go. It looks pretty decent. My candle store. Shop now button, dark mode as expected. Doesn't look great actually, looks pretty average. All right, follow-up prompts. We're going to that next. I've created an e-commerce website now. I've created a candle store. I've created a to-do application. Next up, the last thing that's left is prompting it again and again and making sure, you know, the new data comes in here. When it does come, it does preview over here as well. So let's get into that next. Let's get into follow-up prompts. All right, let's start creating the UI for it. Somewhere here, we need to file explorer steps list. There you go. Right below it, h-50% minus 1.5 rem. Div input type equal to text or maybe text area. Class name equal to p-2. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, there's this text area right here. I would say not 50 but 70. That looks decent. Let the text area take the full width. Let's add a button send. Where is the send button? Div class name equal to flex, which has the text area and the button. I see the text area. Oh, button doesn't have. Where is the, there you go. That's the button. Class name equal to 𝗥𝗲𝗵𝗹𝗀𝗀𝗀 400 p-4 8 to px-4 to this thing max-h-7tvh. Prompt text area on change equal to set prompt e.target.value, and let's create a global state variable called prompt. Const user prompt comma set prompt equal to use state, and this user prompt is what we need to send to the backend every time the person clicks the button. So let's see, button on click equal to, we need to send this user prompt to the LLM. But not just that, we need to send it a bunch of things. We need to send it everything from the beginning. So I would say template steps response is this thing. There you go. So this yeah, so I would store here const LLM messages comma set LLM messages equal to use state empty array, and anytime the thing initializes, which happens right here, I'm going to say set LLM messages, this thing, that looks decent, and I will give it a nice type here, an array of role user or assistant content string array. That is what I've set it to be over here. And anytime I get back a response, which happens here, steps response, dot data dot response, that's the assistant response I need to keep in mind. So it will be this set LLM messages x dot 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 x comma role assistant comma content this thing. And now I already have some LLM messages that I've already sent. Now when I click on the prompt, this button to send the prompt, I'm going to say const new message equal to role user content prompt, and then I'm going to say const steps response equal to await axios dot post. Again, the same thing we've already done here. Backend URL / chat. Only thing is, this time the messages I need to send are going to be dot 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 user prompts comma new message, and don't need any of that. And also set user or set prompt x comma this new message. Alrighty, that looks decent. Set prompt, set messages, or set LLM messages. Set LLM messages to be this X role content user assistant. User, and once you get the response, you add the new steps and yeah, there we go. That adds the new set of steps here on the left, and then uske baad they get processed eventually, so that's fine. Cool, that looks decent. When the user clicks on the button, we forward the message to the LLM, which has all of our user responses, the assistant responses, and my new prompt, and hopefully it returns what it's supposed to. Then we follow the steps, create the new files, and go from there. That looks like that should do what it's supposed to do. Create a to-do app. Is my backend down? Indeed it is. Let me restart the backend. Create a to-do app. It creates a bunch of default files, which is fine. And then it has sent the response to load more data, like the actual to-do application. So we'll wait for that to succeed. Backend looks decent. Let me also preview. Waiting for the to-do app to be created. There you go, to-do app has been created. It has a bunch of things. It looks like this. Now comes the question whether or not the follow-up prompt works. So let me inspect, open the network tab, and in the follow-up prompt, write something like, please convert this to dark mode. Please convert this to dark mode, and we'll see if this works or not. Open the network tab and see what the request looks like. And the request failed, like input doesn't match the expected shape. What did I send? Let's see, what did I send? payload messages. Whoa. Second message also looks weird. First message also looks weird. Please convert this to, oh, interesting. Set prompt e.target.value. I think that looks right. Value equal to user prompt. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, I think what I know what the issue is. Steps response equal to message is would be dot 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 LLM messages. Yeah, comma the new message, and the new message looks almost wrong. This should be user prompt. Yeah, that's my bad. Let's try it one more time. Let's start the backend. Let's inspect this. This looks decent. Bunch of, yeah, that looks right. So let's send it again. And this time I'm sending it a bunch of messages that say initially create very good designs. These are the initial set of files. Create a to-do application. Assistant responded back with the initial to-do app, and then I ask it to convert this to dark mode with a bunch of extra things here. Let's see what it responds back with here. Again, this should be streaming. The bad UX right now is that we're not streaming the responses, which would again be a challenge on the front end. It's easy to do on the back end, but it'll be a challenge on the front end to update the files, show them in the pretty UI that bolt.new does. So like standard Web 2 challenges compared to any AI challenges in building something like this. All right. Response came back. Seems like files changed. Let's go to preview. And as you can see, the to-do application is in dark mode now. So let me try one more. Make the add button green in color, please. And add a bunch of default to-dos. Let me inspect just to see if it works or not. Send. And if I look at the LLM response, or the request at the very least, it looks like all right, we missed an LLM response. My bad. One thing I need to do is set steps is fine. Step response is this thing, and then I need to do this as well. Case ke baad role assistant and content would be so response dot data dot response. Yeah, I missed one assistant response, but I think it should be fine. Let's see. Network tab. Yeah, let's start from scratch. Alrighty. We have an application. I'm going to say create a to-do app, please. Wait for it to do it. Is my backend up? Backend seems up. It created a few things, but isn't yet complete. It's still getting the to-do application from the backend. While that is happening, I can open the preview. I can also look at the code, start to explore it a little bit. Okay, app.tsx looks like this, index.css looks like this. I can also preview it. Preview takes some time right now, but well, not too long. Here is the default website. We're waiting for the LLM to respond. As soon as the LLM responds, this default website should get converted into a to-do application. There we go. See a bunch of things that came here. I see a to-do application here. Let me prompt it now. Please convert it to dark mode. Change text from task manager to to-do manager. Send. Of course, we need some feedback on the buttons and everything, but I'm hoping that's easy to add. We need like loaders everywhere whenever the prompt is active. Yeah, but again, should be easy to add. All right, there we go. Looks like dark mode has been enabled and it says to do manager here, which is what I asked it to do. Sorry, convert text back to to-do list manager and placeholder to be create a new task. Placeholder is the thing that's written over here. Send it. Wait for it. I hope the backend is still up. Seems like it. There we go. And now it says to-do list manager. It says create a new task, which is what I asked it to do. Alrighty guys, that's how you create a website that can make other websites. Now let me quickly do some polishes, add some loaders here and there, and try out a full end-to-end flow next. Alright folks, added some very basic polishing. I'm going to start the backend again. Frontend is already running. Let me try something new. No idea. Create the frontend for a 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗀-like application that lets me deploy my own apps on the cloud for free. Let's see what that looks like. We have some initial folder structure. I've added a loader, which is telling you, okay, more data is coming in. And you can't prompt when more data is coming in. As I said, one big to do here, if you want a challenge, is fork the code base and add streaming to it. When you're adding streaming, make sure, okay, if let's say to-do.tsx is being streamed, to-do.tsx opens up over here, it is automatically open over here, and you see the stream data coming. That would be nice. Similar to how bolt.new does it. A lot of front-end challenges in building something like this. All right, seems like this is done. I have a bunch of components, navbar, things like these. Let's preview it and see what it looks like. I've added a loader here as well. This is still taking longer than I would hope. All right, we found our first sort of a bug also. The LLM forgot to put a dependency in package.json, specifically React Router DOM. This seems like a more complex application. So it involves React Router DOM, but you don't see it here. So can we try doing, can you add React Router DOM as a dependency? Question mark. And let's see if the LLM is able to fix it. All right, I see React Router DOM here. If I go to preview now, I still see an error. And there we go. NPM is, I don't know, whatever the reason what the error was. If I went back to the preview, the error goes away, and we have a 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗀-like application that we had to prompt twice to create because first time there was an error. Now if I want, I can make it as fancy as I want. This seems like 𝗟𝗏𝗀 only. These are my projects. This is my dashboard. These are the total deployments that I've done, analytics, so on and so forth. New project button does nothing right now, so I can say, please make the new project button create a modal where I can connect a new project. Send it. All right, let's see. New project. Yeah, I can add github.com/𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀 import. Oh, select the framework. It's not selectable, but that's fine. Deploy projects now it doesn't add it here, but I can keep reprompting from here. You know the thing to do from here. So hopefully that's easy enough. I think the most difficult part was, it wasn't even that. Web containers were a little difficult. I think the most difficult part was just unwrapping the files over here, and whenever an update happens, putting the updates over here, making this editor of sorts. But if you are creating this for production, you can use something like Monaco, and offload all of this to that. That's what Bolt uses as well. What else? GPT parsing was a little weird. We're right now using this function that you guys saw. What is the function called? Where was it stored? It's steps.ts, this parse XML function. This can be made better. Right now it uses regexes to parse the response from the LLM. That's the other complicated thing here. Everything else is fairly straightforward, right? There's nothing too complicated in building something like this. And the challenges remain fairly similar if you're building other products that are, GPT wrappers. For example, if I take you through the slides, we did a class on this yesterday only. And the slides, if I'll quickly sprint through this. This class was around GPT wrappers. So, Slides AI is one company, InVideo AI is another company, Finder is another company, Bolt is another company. All four of these are GPT wrappers, which, as you would suggest, is a website where you give a prompt, it goes to a backend, adds a system prompt to it, reaches an LLM, gets back the response, and dumps the response on the front end. The only difficult part here is enriching the prompt that you're sending, telling the LLM very strictly what it needs to return, and then finally parsing the response that you get back from here. Irrespective of what you're building, the most difficult bit would be, creating the website or creating the video or creating the slides in this case. That's the difficult bit, which is not really AI related. It's more of a, simple Web 2 problem. And talking to the LLM remains the same. There are challenges that will come. For example, streaming data is one thing we haven't done. You should do it. We are not yet. What if the message is really long? So, at some point you should ask the user if the context window is met. Do you want to keep continuing generating the response? That's another thing. Challenges that come when this project becomes really big: exporting the project, deploying the project. These are things that Bolt.new provides, but we haven't yet added. So might be good things to add in case you feel like pursuing the idea. It's open source, linked in the description. Feel free to build it yourself. I don't think I've built it very professionally, so I wouldn't really think of this as an open source project that you can contribute to. If you want to do it, build it yourself. I think build a more polished version. I think even building this is like extremely hard. Their navigation UI to do app. The animation that you saw when the chat box went to the bottom, and especially this, this thing coming up on the right in an animated fashion, and this preview and code section, this Monaco editor over here, the shell at the bottom, the terminal over here to create, send more commands over there, ls, things like these. These are cool things to do. So it's more of a front-end challenge, which you should take. With that, I will end it. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.